Chapter 2739. Future Su Yu's scalp went numb. What the heck, real body, can't you train less? Even I am afraid of myself. Su Yu was also surprised. The Su Yu in the mirror could even imitate the divine nine-dragon cauldron. Isn't this a little too realistic? However, Su Yu was alone in the mirror, and he was destined to be no match for the two of them. Swish, swish, one of them summoned the divine nine-dragon cauldron, and the other summoned the domain cauldron. Rumble, the three cauldrons collided violently in the air. First, the domain cauldron shattered in the clash between the two divine nine-dragon cauldrons. Then, Su Yu's divine nine-dragon cauldron in the mirror shattered with a loud bang. The real divine nine-dragon cauldron's power was greatly reduced, and it returned to Su Yu's palm. Shortly after, the attacks of the two men arrived with a loud rumble, causing Su Yu, who was in the mirror, to retreat repeatedly. However, even as he was injured, he continued to use time reversal. In an instant, his injuries were completely healed. At the same time, he reacted quickly and immediately counterattacked. 8 great domains! In the mirror, Su Yu's eyes shone with the light of the 8 great domains. Among the 8 domains there were 2 elemental domains. The power was naturally incomparable. The future incarnation laughed angrily. Main body, can you still tolerate this fool using our things to deal with us? Su Yu said coldly, cut the crap. Suppress him completely. 8 domains. 8 domains. 2 of the 8 domains were executed at the same time. The result was predictable. In the mirror, Su Yu's 8 great domains were immediately crushed by 2 of the 8 great domains. However, in the mirror, Su Yu's third wave of attack was ready to be launched. He didn't give the 2 Su Yus the chance to kill him. Fortunately, Su Yu had anticipated this. There was no one in the world who could understand himself better than himself. If this continued, the Su Yu in the mirror would attack endlessly. Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron, suppress. He threw out his palm. The divine nine-dragon cauldron turned into a colossal object that was as large as the sky. It pressed down on Su Yu's reflection from above, preparing to refine him directly. However, in the mirror, Su Yu was already prepared. With a space domain, he immediately disappeared. However, he had just appeared from the space domain. Caught off guard, he was enveloped by another prepared domain cauldron. In the mirror, Su Yu resisted desperately, bursting forth with a peerlessly powerful domain. With a cracking sound, a crack appeared on the domain cauldron. Then, Su Yu's figure flew out of the mirror. However, as soon as he appeared, the divine nine-dragon cauldron fell down and suppressed him. In the mirror, Su Yu refused to compromise and resisted with all his might. Su Yu stepped on the divine nine-dragon cauldron and suppressed it completely. He then activated the divine nine-dragon cauldron to refine it completely. Incarnation, go quickly! Taking advantage of this time, he ordered. How could the future incarnation dare to hesitate? He immediately attacked the martial arts temple. However, after such a long time, the voice of death of the martial arts temple had been completed. He suddenly opened his eyes, which were filled with a layer of coldness that deterred the world. Who? He took a deep breath and grinned coldly. Come, I'll let you have a taste of the power of the heavenly death melody. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the densely packed black heavenly book characters swept over like a pear-blossom rainstorm. The future incarnation was caught off guard and immediately unleashed its time domain. Time freeze. However, the heavenly book characters could not be controlled at all and swept over without losing any momentum. The future incarnation was surprised and immediately took out the domain cauldron to block in front of him. However, the heavenly book characters completely ignored the domain cauldron, penetrated it, and hit the future Su Yu directly. Just one heavenly book character hit the future Su Yu. He was immediately smashed into ashes. There was no room for compromise at all. Su Yu's pupils shrank as he watched. Seeing the sky full of heavenly book characters coming towards him, He took out the divine nine-dragon cauldron and slapped it hard, sending the Suyu in the mirror flying out. He happened to be hit by one of the characters. In an instant, the Suyu in the mirror did not even have the chance to resist and was bombarded into nothingness. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Suyu tried to take out the divine nine-dragon cauldron to wipe out the heavenly book characters. However, the characters ignored all attacks. What was even more terrifying was, Suyu tried to change directions. The heavenly book characters followed closely, and the distance between them could not be widened no matter how hard he tried to escape. The Martial Path Temple said sympathetically, "It's useless, this is my strongest secret soul technique. Once it is used, it will be closely linked to your soul, and you will not be able to escape." Looking at the scene of Suyu dodging in panic, he shook his head slightly. "It seems that you will die without a doubt, how disappointing." Swoosh, swoosh. The heavenly book characters that filled the sky were about to bombard him. Suyu gritted his teeth and waved his palm. Suddenly, a long pitch-black sickle appeared in his palm. The Space Dominator bloodline in his body immediately boiled. The black sickle in his palm immediately turned into a burning red sickle. Moreover, its shape changed drastically. First, it was the handle. It was originally a metallic luster, but now it had turned into an ancient vine wood. The pitch-black sickle had turned into a mysterious object with 9 heads. Those heads were the heads of Tao Tai. Moreover, on each head, there was a Tao Tai's eye. When the Martial Path Temple saw this object, his pupils suddenly shrank. His face, which had always been cold, burst into a look of horror. The great sickle of 10,000 tribulations? How could it be in your hands? He actually knew this object. Moreover, unprecedented fear broke out in his eyes. Suyu's eyes were cold. The future incarnation had been beaten half to death by the great sickle of 10,000 tribulations. One could imagine its power. After releasing the true state of the great sickle of 10,000 tribulations with the bloodline of the ruler, Suyu held it with both hands and continued to instill the power of the realm. The Martial Path Temple retreated in horror. "No. Stop." But why would Suyu listen? He waved it fiercely at the Martial Path Temple. Roar. 9 deafening, fierce roars suddenly erupted. The 9 Tao Tai's eyes opened at the same time, emitting 9 beams of destructive black light. The black light swept past, and everything disappeared into thin air. The sky disappeared directly, revealing nothingness. The nothingness also disappeared strangely, revealing the Great Defensive Formation. Even the Great Defensive Formation disappeared. A large, empty space was revealed. The 9 beams of black light formed a line and swept away. Everything that was swept away was turned into nothingness. They did not disappear. Instead, they were devoured by the Tao Tai's eyes for eternity. Even the sound of death, which was so powerful today, was devoured in an instant. Not even a trace of it was left. The Martial Path Temple's face changed dramatically. He grabbed Zhan Wushuang, who had a stiff expression on his face, with one hand. Then, he tore through the sky and escaped. He even gave up the soul realm that he had painstakingly built for countless years. "Save me!" The Martial Path Temple took out an ancient sword and stabbed it into the sky. Suddenly, a beam of light fell from the sky. In an instant, the Martial Path Temple and Zhan Wushuang were swept away. The black light swept past, brushing past the Martial Path Temple's body. The black light did not slow down. It bombarded the half-true realm. The half-true realm only lasted for a moment before it disappeared completely. After a long time, the black light finally dissipated completely. What was left was half of the flattened No, the soul realm that had been devoured. Chapter 2740. Suyu stared in the direction where the Martial Path Temple had escaped. Who had saved him? Where did that beam of light come from? The Martial Path Temple was not an ordinary master, but belonged to a huge hidden force? Roar. 9 roars interrupted Suyu's thoughts. He stared at the scythe of 10,000 tribulations in his hand, which was still bursting with black light. Su Yu immediately stopped instilling the domain, and the blood of the master also calmed down. In this way, the scythe of 10,000 tribulations finally returned to an ordinary scythe. The scythe of 10,000 tribulations made from the head of a Tao Tai? Su Yu was shocked. He had seen the Tao Tai with his own eyes and knew how terrifying it was. To be able to cut off the heads of 9 Tao Tais and refine them into a Tao artifact. No, it should be a quasi-saint artifact. It was not hard to imagine who this person was. Apart from those on the holy mountain, there should be few people who could do it. After putting away the scythe of 10,000 tribulations, Su Yu looked at the soul realm that had been destroyed. There was a hint of sadness in his eyes. Although the soul realm was destroyed and the Martial Path Temple retreated. However, some people were still lost. Maybe we shouldn't have reunited, Su Yu murmured. An inexplicable sadness surged in his heart. First Xie Xiaoya, then Han Xian. One by one, the old friends who had appeared in his life disappeared in front of him. They had become irretrievable. Was this a regret in life, or was it fate? He clenched his fists, sat cross-legged on a meteorite, and took out the bronze plate. The ruler of the abyss of death once said. The bronze plate was the key to reaching the realm of returning. If he could study the mystery, he might be able to pass through 2 worlds. He would bring back all those who had disappeared from life forever from the realm of returning. Just like Xie Xiaoya silently brought Su Yu back with 10 years of time. The Tao Abyss. Su Yu looked at the outer region, a deep existence. If there was no accident, that should be the legendary Tao Abyss. The bronze plate came from the Tao Abyss. If he wanted to crack the secret, he had to return to the Tao Abyss to explore. After thinking for a long time, Su Yu put away the bronze plate. He had made up his mind that when everything in the 8-star civilization was over, it would be time to go to the Tao Abyss. Swish. Suddenly, a slight fluctuation came from afar. Su Yu glanced sideways and could clearly sense an extraordinary life force surging toward him like a tsunami from the dark void. Life Master, have you seen enough? Su Yu asked calmly. The soul realm was a neighbor of the life realm. As the life sovereign who had yet to die, how could she not notice such a huge commotion? Back when he was fighting the Martial Way Temple, the life god had been watching from the side. Only now did he finally show himself. A jade-green ripple slowly spread out. In the void, countless graceful flowers appeared out of thin air, exuding the aura of life. Amidst the countless flowers, a beautiful 19-year-old girl wearing a veil slowly walked over. Unlike the other hegemons, the life hegemon had eternal life, as well as a face that would never grow old. From beginning to end, she was like a 19-year-old girl. Greetings, sacred physique Su. The life sovereign's voice was gentle and beautiful. Her temperament was even more ethereal, like a fairy who didn't eat the food of the mortal world. Su Yu stood up slowly and said coldly, "You are really bold to appear in front of the descendant of the ancient god Jilong. Wasn't she afraid that Su Yu would end her life with the sickle? I am not your enemy, so why don't I dare to show myself?" The life sovereign's veil fluttered as she smiled calmly. Su Yu understood the meaning behind her words and said, "The hatred between the ancient god Jilong and the 8 great rulers is well known, right?" The life sovereign smiled sweetly and shook her head. "That is with the ancient god Jilong, not with you." Su Yu really didn't want to be an enemy of the life sovereign. In fact, he even needed her help with some things. "Tell me, why are you looking for me?" Su Yu asked. The life sovereign wouldn't appear unless it was necessary. The life sovereign said softly, "If I say I am here to give you the life domain, would you believe me?" Su Yu was shocked and asked in confusion, "Why?" It was hard to imagine that the life sovereign would voluntarily give her domain to someone else. That would mean that the life sovereign would lose her identity and become a mortal. The life sovereign walked over slowly with a hint of helplessness and sorrow in her eyes. "If you had something that many people covet, what would you do?" Suyu thought about it and said, "Fight to the end." The Life Sovereign's bitterness deepened. What if you have no fighting power and can only protect yourself from destruction? Suyu finally understood what she meant. The Life Sovereign was targeted by the great force of the Martial Path Temple, who wanted to steal her bloodline. Although the Life Sovereign was a ruler, her fighting power was the lowest among all the domains. Her life domain could only ensure that she and her subordinates were immortal. In a real fight, she would be at a disadvantage. "You can give it to anyone else, but why give it to me?" Suyu asked. "The Life Sovereign shouldn't be short of descendants. Because I hope you can owe me a favor. When I return to the world of the living, you will remember this favor," the Life Sovereign said calmly. As the Life Sovereign, even if she gave up the life domain, she would still die. It was better to die on her own. When the era restarted and the world created a new ruler, she would be reborn. However, at that time, she would be at her weakest. She needed some help. Suyu was the best choice. Hearing this, Suyu pondered for a long time. "If you already have such a plan, I can promise you. Obtaining the Yuan-level life domain and assisting the reborn Life Sovereign once in the future was very worthwhile." "Good." The Life Sovereign smiled lightly. Her crystal-like eyes stared at Suyu without blinking. "Thank you." As her voice fell, her body burned with a layer of emerald flame. Drops of the ruler's bloodline were burned out. In the end, a fist-sized jade-green liquid appeared in his palm. The burning Life Sovereign held it and handed it to Suyu. "Here you are." At the same time, the Life Sovereign also took out an emerald ball. "This is my saint artifact, exquisite Xuanji." The Life Sovereign even gave her half-saint artifact to Suyu. Its function is to restore the life of the dead in a large area. Suyu couldn't be more familiar with this. It was equivalent to an enlarged version of resurrection. It was not very useful. In addition, there is another function that those people desperately want. The Life Sovereign revealed a mysterious smile. "Exquisite Xuanji, why don't you try absorbing my ruler's bloodline?" Suyu was puzzled and immediately activated Exquisite Xuanji. What surprised him was that Exquisite Xuanji had absorbed all of the Life God's bloodline. Chapter 2741. Even an outsider like Suyu could fuse it into his body immediately. "Could this be?" Suyu said in surprise. The God of Life nodded slightly. "That's right. You can refine all chief hegemonic bloodlines. If you have the chance to obtain other chief hegemonic bloodlines, you can also refine exquisite jade and make it your own. If this item was obtained by the power behind the martial arts temple, the consequences could be imagined. With the hegemon bloodlines they currently possessed, they could create someone with multiple hegemon bloodlines in a very short time. No wonder the martial Dao temple was capturing hegemonic descendants and extracting their blood. It turned out that he had prepared such an ambitious plan. "I've handed everything over to you. I hope you won't go back on your word." The Life Sovereign was burned until she became transparent. His life force was rapidly decreasing. Suyu cupped his fists and said, "Go in peace. When you reappear in this world, I will find you." The Life Dominus smiled sweetly. "Thank you." Then, it turned completely transparent. The Life Sovereign had passed away just like that. Within the Life Realm, among the 8-star civilizations, the Life sector was the most flourishing. This was because the living beings in the Life Realm were constantly enveloped by the Life Sovereign's life aura. It was almost immortal, enjoying eternal life. Now that the Life Sovereign was dead, the chief sovereign aura that they had obtained over a long period of time had vanished. In a short period of time, more than half of them died. The entire Life Realm turned into a deathly silent ghost realm. Suyu absorbed the life domain on the spot. Because Linglong Xuanji had already refined the bloodline, Suyu managed to fuse the bloodline in an instant. His domain immediately rose to the Yuan level. At this point, Suyu had mastered the time, soul, and life domains at the same time. He controlled 3 of the 8 elemental realms. How many people among the 8-star civilizations could still fight? Apart from the extremely mysterious chief sovereign of death, who might pose a threat to him, no one should be able to fight him. Having mastered the Yuan level life domain, Suyu had no choice but to extract Yunyazi's soul. The Abyss of Death had once said that Yunyazi's body would only be in a weakened state after being resurrected with his intermediate life force domain. It was far inferior to the Yuan level life domain, which could restore it to its strongest state. As he stared at Yunyazi's soul, Suyu could not help but feel nervous. Could it really restore Yunyazi to his peak state? He had waited too long for this day. Taking a deep breath, Suyu immediately displayed the Yuan level life domain. Under the effects of the domain, Yunyazi's soul was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye, with this strand of soul as the foundation. After the time it takes to burn half an incense stick, the entire outline of Yunyazi began to reappear. Then, it slowly solidified. His soul energy began to swell. It didn't take long for him to reach the Yellow Path Master Realm, and then he climbed rapidly to the Earth Path Master Realm. However, this was only the beginning. He had no intention of stopping. In the blink of an eye, he had surpassed the realm of a heavenly law lord. Suyu was surprised. Is Yunyazi really a master of the heavenly Tao? Wouldn't his peak state be comparable to a sovereign's? However, reality proved that Suyu had still underestimated Yunyazi. His soul energy continued to surge, and it didn't take long for him to break through to the peak of early-stage Heavenly Tao Lord. In terms of pure soul strength, it was comparable to all the rulers Suyu had ever seen. What was even more frightening was the fact that the surge had yet to stop. After a difficult climb, he had finally reached the mid-stage of the Tao of Heaven. The strength of his soul was second only to the Demon Emperor that Suyu had seen. All of a sudden, the 8-star civilizations were shaken. Countless surviving creatures could feel the pressure coming from their souls. In the abyss outside the area, a destructive aura erupted, as if responding to the arrival of such a powerful aura. Finally, Yunyazi's soaring soul finally stopped. However, Suyu's heart couldn't calm down. This was Yunyazi at his peak. He was an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Demon Emperor. At this moment, Yunyazi's soul slowly opened its eyes. In an instant, the great formation outside the area trembled violently. It was as if it couldn't withstand the fluctuations and was about to shatter. He looked at the shattered 8-star civilization, his face filled with deep sorrow. The last island has been destroyed. Island? Suyu was confused. He didn't understand what Yunyazi meant by the island. The absolute beginning creatures have reached a point where they can no longer retreat. Yunyazi's eyes were filled with sorrow. He stood there for a long time. Then he finally looked at Suyu, his eyes filled with deep emotion. "Child, you've suffered." He remembered that he should have died under the sword of the sinful lady. Now he could be resurrected, and he was restored to his original peak state. One could imagine how much suffering Suyu had gone through. "Master, welcome back." Suyu cupped his fists and bowed deeply. Yunyazi looked a little ashamed and laughed at himself. In this world, how can there be a master who needs a disciple to save him twice? I really don't have the face to call myself your master. Besides, I haven't taught you anything. What you have now is almost all your own. Yunyazi felt even more ashamed. He had only given Suyu two things. One was the wordless heavenly book. The other was the heaven's sun gazing at air. The rest were all obtained by Suyu with confidence. If Master hadn't supported me when I was weak, how could I be where I am today? Suyu said gratefully. Back then, the abyss of Wudong didn't have Yunyazi's help. Suyu had probably become a skeleton at the bottom of the abyss. Sigh. Yunyazi sighed deeply. I have never owed anyone anything in my life. You are the only one who owes me too much. Suyu was about to say something. Yunyazi looked up at the abyss outside the area and said slowly, Fine, let me do something for you. Master, just protect yourself. Don't take any more risks for me. Suyu caught Yunyazi's gaze and stopped him. In that abyss was a being that even the 8 great masters were wary of. Yunyazi was a soul, so it was best not to go. Yunyazi looked at Suyu and shook his head. If you don't go now, it will be too late. You have been lacking the 9th realm for too long. The 9th realm? Suyu was stunned. Weren't there only 8 great realms in this world? Where did the 9th realm come from? Sensing the confusion in Suyu's eyes, Yunyazi said, "Don't be surprised. There is a 9th realm in the Great Beginning Realm. When the era was restarted, the Holy Mountain gave birth to the 9 great realms." What? This secret completely subverted Suyu's understanding of the world. The masters of the 8 great realms, the 8 great masters, had a large part of their realms intercepted by the ancient god Jilong. Yunyazi seemed to know the past and future of the world. Only the master of the 9th realm was able to predict the situation and escape the disaster. Now, he should be hiding in the abyss. Suyu was shocked and couldn't help but take out the divine 9-dragon cauldron. In the end, there was a dragon that couldn't be crystallized and couldn't give birth to rules. Suyu had always thought that his method was wrong. Now he understood that the ancient god Jilong was planning to plunder the 9 great masters' realms. However, he only succeeded in taking the realms of the 8 great masters. Chapter 2742. In other words, the divine 9-dragon cauldron was a damaged sacred artifact. He was missing the last domain. However, Suyu couldn't figure out what the last domain would be. Suyu had only sensed the existence of the 8 great realms. Master, even if it's as you said, the divine 9-dragon cauldron lacks the last domain, so what? Why did you say that things might change if we delay? Suyu asked. Yunyazi looked up at the sky. Suyu followed his gaze and looked over. In the sky above the broken 8-star civilization, in the dark void, there was a faint yellow light. At first glance, it looked like a star. But in reality, it wasn't light. Instead, it was an unknown existence. That direction, if he remembered correctly. It should be the sacred mountain. Yunyazi sighed softly. The sacred mountain has been destroyed, and the era has been restarted. The 9th ruler will definitely appear. If we don't find him before he does, we won't have the chance. Yunyazi looked meaningfully at the divine 9-dragon cauldron. There is someone who desires the 9th realm more than you. Hearing this, Suyu's heart was moved. He was well aware of who Yunyazi was talking about. Master, it doesn't matter if you can't get it, but please don't take the risk. The Tao Abyss is too dangerous, Suyu said. Yunyazi shook his head. If I don't go, you will be in even more danger. When he finished speaking, he did not give Suyu a chance to refute, and he waved his finger in front of Suyu. A piece of complicated heavenly book text appeared before his eyes. Suyu swept his gaze over them and discovered that he knew all of them. After experiencing the heavenly script several times, he had already mastered more rare heavenly script based on his previous foundation. Yunyazi's eyes were filled with admiration. You recognize all of them. That's unexpected. It seems like you've come into contact with a lot of heavenly script characters later on. Suyu nodded. He had long suspected that Yunyazi had held back on the heavenly book characters that he had imparted to him. Now, it seemed that it was true. Since that's the case, it's time for me to pass on the remaining forbidden chapters to you. Yunyazi made his decision. He put his finger on the tip of his eyebrow and pulled out a piece of soul memory from his mind. Then, it shot into Suyu's body. All of a sudden, a chapter called the Heavenly Book of Darkness appeared in Suyu's mind. What was recorded on it was actually how to use the Heavenly Book characters to unleash various defensive or offensive secret skills. Before this, the words of the Heavenly Book were merely a storage of knowledge for Suyu. He took a closer look and was surprised to find that it had the Heavenly Prison Isolation method that the martial arts temple had once set up. He used a portion of the heavenly book's words to scatter in the surroundings, forming the strongest defense in the world. Not only could it injure the enemy, but it could also wake him up. Apart from that, Suyu also vaguely saw some secret techniques similar to the sound of death of the soul. It was described that as long as it was used properly, the power of the heavenly book's words could be stimulated to the point where the words could kill. The martial arts temple boasted of their talent and created their own sound of death. In truth, it was just something he had learned from the Tome of Darkness and modified slightly. Moreover, perhaps the martial arts temple had a limited number of chapters. As a result, the casting process was very slow, and someone had to delay the enemy. The drawbacks were very serious. On the other hand, the Tome of Darkness could be used instantaneously as long as it was used properly. "Master, what is this?" Suyu asked in surprise. What he saw just now was only the first part of the chapter, the most superficial secret technique. The secret technique at the back was getting more and more profound, even with a hint of evil. Yun Yazi had a complicated look on his face. "This book comes from the Holy Mountain. You can use it, but don't delve too deeply into it." His eyes were filled with deep fear and solemnity. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. From the Holy Mountain? Who wrote it? Was it the Stone-birth Son of Heaven? "You should study it seriously," Yun Yazi said. "Besides, there are only 5 years left before the restart of the era. You should find a place to stay as soon as possible." After saying that, Yun Yazi's aura soared, and he was ready to fly away. Suyu hurriedly said, "Take care, Master. You too, we'll meet again in the new era." Yun Yazi looked deeply at Suyu and stepped out of the region with a smile. Suyu watched him leave, but his heart couldn't calm down for a long time. The Ninth Realm. The Tome of Darkness. After Yun Yazi woke up, he brought more mysteries to Suyu. Looking at the Broken Soul Realm, Suyu recalled what Yun Yazi had said. The 8-star civilization was the last isolated island. Thinking of that, he set off for the Life Realm. What he saw was a realm of withering life, a realm of dead silence. In the Life Realm, only wastelands were left. Taking another step forward, what came into view was the Death Realm. If the Life Realm was a wasteland, then there was nothing in the Death Realm. The entire realm was destroyed to the point where not even a speck of dust was left. The defensive formation below was in a vacuum state. It had been completely destroyed. The Death Realm, completely destroyed. Suyu set off for the next realm. But without exception, all of them were destroyed. The 3 realms of reincarnation, fate, and creation have all been destroyed. Suyu stood in the vast void, horrified. The incomparably huge 8-star civilization. In the end, only a small remnant of the southern world of dreams in the Time Realm was left. Half of the Soul Realm remained. The life in the Life Realm was destroyed, but the continent was still there. The rest of the land was completely destroyed. If the era was destroyed without the defensive formation, how could they resist? There was not much time left. Only 5 years left. A short 5 years. He had to take action. Otherwise, he, his lover, his daughter, all his friends, and all his old friends would be annihilated in the dust of history. He looked back at the remaining Life Realm and half of the Soul Realm. Suyu took a deep breath. Space transfer. With the transfer, the entire vast Life Realm was constantly moving. A year passed. There was a loud bang. The Life Realm and half of the Soul Realm were connected. Another year passed. The 2 connected realms were finally connected with the remaining Time Realm. The remnants of the defense formation were also moved over. Suyu pulled the defensive formation and weaved it into a giant net, wrapping the realms that had been reconnected. Took a whole 2 years. Suyu looked up again. His face slowly sank. The Holy Mountain was getting closer and closer. A patch of dim yellow light illuminated half of the void with a yellowish hue. Moreover, there was a trace of scorching air that came 1 step ahead of him. It was hard to imagine. When the Holy Mountain completely descended, What would happen to the 8-star civilization? The continent in front of him was the last space for the 8-star civilization. There would be no other place to live. After doing all this, Su Yu finally had time to return to the Empress Hall. As soon as he returned, a fragrant wind hit him, accompanied by a clear call, "Brother!" It was the descendants of the Star Rain Empress and several other Time Masters. "You are still alive!" Su Yu breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 2743. Unfortunately, it seemed that it was already too late. They did not succeed. Hearing this, Empress Star Rain's small face dimmed and she said, "I've tried my best, but it's hard to stop them. They still didn't listen to our persuasion." Su Yu patted her shoulder and said, "It doesn't matter. We just need to protect ourselves. You have already done your best." Only then did Empress Star Rain feel a little better. Suddenly, Empress Star Rain said, "Right, I saw Kai-Er." "Where is it?" Su Yu asked immediately. The rest of the domains had already been destroyed, so it was best that Su Kai-Er did not encounter any danger. Death Domain. Over there? Su Yu immediately scanned the area that he had pieced together. In the end, he did not find any trace of Su Kai-Er. Empress Star Rain couldn't help but get nervous. "Is Kai-Er back?" "No," Su Yu said. "But she is fine." Su Yu had Kai-Er's life jade plate with him. If something had happened to her, her life tablet would have shattered long ago. A hint of worry appeared between his brows. If Su Kai-Er wasn't in the splicing domain, where could she be? The other domains had already been destroyed. Husband. When Qin Xianer sensed Su Yu's return, she immediately rushed over and threw herself into his embrace. Su Yu hugged her tightly. As he gazed at her beautiful face, he felt a pang of pain in his heart. "It must have been hard on you when I was away, right?" The time domain that had suffered a great calamity had many matters to handle. After he left, Qin Xianer was left to support him alone. He would be lying if he said he wasn't tired. "No matter how tired I am, how can I be more tired than you?" Qin Xianer touched Su Yu's cheek and said softly, "It's all thanks to you, my husband, that the 3 realms were able to provide the last resting place for all living beings. After a great battle, more than half of the creatures of the 8-star civilizations were killed. The rest were all concentrated in the small patchwork domain. By the way, has the organization I founded moved here?" Qin Xianer nodded. "We moved here a long time ago. Do you need to see them?" Su Yu thought for a moment and nodded. "Yes. Many creatures are gathered in this patchwork domain. It's inevitable that there will be many disputes. We need someone reliable to manage them. Very soon." Empress Hall. Su Yu saw the cauldron that he hadn't seen for a long time. "Greetings, Cauldron Master." Many experts stepped forward to pay their respects. Among them were many people Su Yu was familiar with. For example, Deputy Cauldron Venerable Dark King, Snow Swordsman, Dead Soul Worm. However, most of them were strong men whom Su Yu was unfamiliar with. These were all cores that the cauldron had absorbed over the years. Of course, there was also a special existence among them. Meng Kuer. "You've worked hard all these years," Su Yu said with a smile as he looked at them. The cauldron might be very weak. However, they were all people that Su Yu could trust, which was extremely rare. With Venerable Cauldron's fame, everything went smoothly for us. It wasn't hard at all. King of Darkness said. He sighed in his heart. Back then, that puny human did not even dare to touch the Emperor-killing sword. Now, however, he had grown into an existence that could suppress even hegemons. It was unbelievable. After that, Su Yu listened to their reports. He then gave them many resources to distribute to the members of the Cauldron. "Fine, you can all leave," Su Yu said. The members of the Cauldron left one after another. However, Su Yu said, "Meng Kuer, stay behind." Meng Kuer's soft body trembled and stopped. She slowly turned around and bowed slightly. "Father," Su Yu wore a faint smile. "Father? Since you have woken up, why bother calling me father?" Back then, Meng Kuer had been smashed by Su Yu, and she had been smashed silly. She had always regarded Su Yu as her father. Now 100 years had passed. The injuries left by Meng Ku-er had long since healed. How could Su Yu not be able to see this? Meng Ku-er bit her lips, her face was pale, and her eyes were full of determination. What do you want? Just say it. Su Yu walked down from the throne, patted her on the shoulder and said, "Since you are already a member of my cauldron, of course I won't do anything to you." Is that so? Meng Ku-er was surprised. Did Su Yu not want to kill her? Now he could kill her several times with just a look. I want to ask you a question, Su Yu said. Meng Ku-er said, Go ahead. I want to know, what kind of existence is nirvana? Su Yu's eyes were full of confusion. From the moment he stepped into the great beginning realm. A Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. A nirvana. It was everywhere, filling every corner. But it was very strange. After the destruction of the 8-star civilization, the two great hidden forces completely concealed themselves and disappeared without a trace. Meng Ku-er sighed. I knew you would ask me, but unfortunately, my knowledge is very limited. I am just a minor character in Nirvana, placed in Luo Ho's body to conduct experiments, Meng Ku-er said. How could Su Yu forget what happened to Luo Ho? He and the others were captured by Meng Ku-er and transformed. Many of the captured people were thrown into a pool of mysterious liquid and melted on the spot. Only a lucky person like Su Yu had managed to survive and obtain some special talent. What kind of experiment is that? Meng Ku-er shook her head. I am not sure. I only know that through experiments, people with special talents are selected and cultivated into the power of nirvana. After all, her level was too low, and her knowledge was very limited. Su Yu was increasingly puzzled. Experiments. Nirvana remembered that in the Dark Star civilization, Nirvana developed a moon-worshipping cult. They constantly absorbed the faith of the followers and took the opportunity to absorb their soul strength. Was that also one of Nirvana's experiments? What is Nirvana trying to do? Su Yu's mind was a little confused. He remembered that he had once encountered a planet with a mecha civilization in the outer realm. That planet was enveloped by a mysterious force. Could it be that it was also an experimental planet? But was it an experimental planet for Nirvana, or did it belong to other forces? He shook his head, temporarily putting aside these clueless thoughts. All right, you may leave, Su Yu said. After waiting for her to leave, Su Yu formed a seal with both hands and summoned his future incarnation again. Although it had been destroyed by the soul death sound last time, it was after all just an incarnation. It could be summoned again from another time and space. How is the restoration of the Nightmare Crossing Lotus going? The future incarnation nodded. It will be successful in a year. A year later. That should be enough. If the broken defense formation could not withstand the destruction of the world, then, the Nightmare Crossing Lotus was their only way out. He looked at the sky, which was getting closer and closer to the holy mountain. Su Yu involuntarily flipped through the Book of Darkness. It would be best if he could master some secret techniques before the destruction of the world began. But at that moment, a beeping sound came from his body. Su Yu took it out and frowned. It was Yenran's distress signal. Yenran had mastered all the space bloodlines of the Space Master. Chapter 2744. Could it be the people from the martial arts temple? Now that he thought about it, it seemed that they were the only ones who were particularly interested in the Sovereign Lord's bloodline. Thinking of this, how could Su Yu dare to stay any longer? He teleported away and left a message in the remnant domain, be on full alert. He was a little worried that the other party was luring him away. Qin Xianer nodded. She immediately deployed experts from all over to guard the remnant domain. They were determined not to let anyone pass through the defensive formation. For this, she, the 3 protectors, Empress Star Rain, and the others were all on guard. Su Yu's body flickered, and he quickly arrived at the place where Yenran had asked for help. To Su Yu's surprise, This place was not a ruined domain. Instead, it was in the vast void. Why would Yenran appear here? He stood at the place where Yenran had sent out the distress signal and gently waved his hand in the air. An image appeared and continued to flow backwards. Yenran walked out of the remnant domain with a confused expression and came to this place. An audience with a former descendant of the chief sovereign of space. So this was how she was tricked out. Then, the descendant of the space dominus used a spatial magic treasure to teleport a golden carriage over. The golden palanquin released a powerful force that instantly sucked Yenran in. Yenran, who had a spatial bloodline, was unable to escape. He only had time to send out a distress signal. A golden palanquin? Su Yu's eyes shone with a cold light. He remembered when the Phoenix King had attacked the divine capital in the space domain. He had seen a palanquin flash by. However, no matter who the other party was, since they were on the same side as the martial arts temple, they were his enemies. Su Yu used the space domain and immediately chased after him. 1 month later, in the distance, Su Yu saw a golden palanquin speeding through the void. Freeze! He activated the elemental time domain, and the sky on the other side froze. The golden palanquin immediately stopped. Su Yu took a step forward and arrived in front of the golden carriage. However, he did not rush forward recklessly. There were already too many precedents of people breaking free from the freeze of time. He naturally did not dare to be careless. From afar, Su Yu took out the divine nine-dragon cauldron, turned it into a fragmentary shadow, and struck it fiercely. Just as they were about to collide, the golden palanquin, which was clearly frozen in place, suddenly moved. Moreover, a boundless purple air current gushed out of the sedan chair, which forcefully pushed the divine nine-dragon cauldron back. If that purple air current sprayed onto a human body, the consequences could be imagined. As expected, he's pretending to be frozen. Su Yu said coldly, "If you want to ambush me with such a small trick, then you are really underestimating me." A moon rose above his head, illuminated by the soul light. No matter how tight the golden palanquin was, no matter how powerful the restrictions were, they were still penetrated. Su Yu could vaguely see the scene inside. He saw a slender girl with a veil covering her face sitting coldly inside. In front of him was an unconscious woman. It was Yenran. The woman raised her head, as if sensing that she had been seen through. She sighed softly and walked out of the sedan chair. She stared at Su Yu silently. "Servant, you have mastered another origin realm technique. How troublesome." Su Yu looked at her coldly. This woman gave him a very dangerous feeling. Or rather, they shared the same origin. "Who are you?" Su Yu asked. The woman said indifferently, "Me? If you want, you can call me Master." "Master?" Su Yu laughed. He had never been a slave in his life, so how could he have a master? However, the next moment, Su Yu's expression changed slightly. The woman weaved signs with her hands, and the signs changed rapidly. The divine nine-dragon cauldron in Su Yu's hands trembled slightly, as if it was about to obey her control. If the divine nine-dragon cauldron had not been in Su Yu's hands for so many years, it would have been extremely sturdy. Just now, this woman had already snatched the divine nine-dragon cauldron. "You are the successor of the ancient god Jilong?" Su Yu asked seriously. The woman stopped making signs and sighed with slight disappointment. "The divine nine-dragon cauldron has been in your hands for too long. What a pity." She looked at Su Yu again and said, "Since you know who I am, you can call me Master now." She looked at Su Yu with a condescending gaze from the beginning to the end. It was as if Su Yu was born to be a head lower than her. Su Yu was surprised. However, he already knew about the existence of the successor of the ancient god Jilong, so he was not overly surprised. "So, you are the successor of the ancient god Jilong," Su Yu said calmly. Su Yu said calmly, "For the sake of the ancient god Jilong, let go of my person, and you can leave with your own life." No matter what, He had relied on the ancient god Julong's small cauldron to get to where he was today. Suyu probably could not bring himself to kill the successor of the ancient god Julong. You think too much. A servant has no right to bargain with a master, the woman said indifferently. Suyu raised his eyebrows, his face cold. Stop calling me a servant. Do I owe you anything? Suyu did not care, and his murderous aura was released naturally. Don't challenge my patience. Let go of her. If she was stubborn, what was wrong with killing her? The woman shook her head. A servant who challenges a master never has a good ending. Are you sure you want to be my enemy? Suyu said coldly, ignorant woman. With a wave of his palm, the three Yuanjia domains of time, soul, and life appeared at the same time. Soul deprivation, Suyu said calmly. The woman calmly weaved signs in front of her, which were all mysterious signs used to control the divine nine-dragon cauldron. The divine nine-dragon cauldron, formed by the interweaving traces of the signs, appeared before her eyes. Suyu saw it clearly. That was the purest way to control the divine nine-dragon cauldron. Nine-dragon roar, the woman said indifferently. All of a sudden, the divine nine-dragon cauldron, formed by the traces, spun and rushed toward Suyu. Space-time shift. Suyu stood where he was, not dodging. He knew that the rotating attack of the divine nine-dragon cauldron could not be successfully avoided by dodging. In an instant, the space-time light pulled the divine nine-dragon cauldron away. The traces that formed the divine nine-dragon cauldron collapsed immediately, and soon, the shape of the divine nine-dragon cauldron was no longer there. But what was even more bizarre was, those traces broke through the restraints of space-time and lashed toward Suyu. Without hesitation, the real divine nine-dragon cauldron in Suyu's hand spun and flew up, slapping away the traces. How about it, servant? Do you still have the courage to challenge me? The woman said indifferently. Suyu retrieved the divine nine-dragon cauldron and said calmly, I said, ignorant. As soon as he finished speaking, a large black shadow suddenly appeared under the woman's feet, instantly entangling her hands and feet. The woman was not flustered at first. She said calmly, one of the two great secret techniques of the Soul Dominator, Soul Shadow Technique. She lowered her head to take a look, and two dragon-shaped flames shot out of her eyes. The large black shadow was immediately incinerated into nothingness. Chapter 2745. The words of the heavenly book, which were emitting golden light, surrounded Suyu. The sound of death of the soul? The woman was surprised, but then she was at a loss. Did you steal it from the Martial Way Temple? Suyu quickly finished the incantation, stared at the woman, and said indifferently, Open your dog eyes and see what this is. This was the simplest secret technique of the Book of Darkness, the sound of death of the soul. It was worlds apart from the low-level version of the Martial Way Temple. Swoosh. As soon as he said that, countless heavenly words shot towards her. The woman once again traced the path of the divine nine-dragon cauldron, trying to block the heavenly words. However, in front of the heavenly book's words, the traces that were outlined were like pieces of paper, completely crushed. At this moment, she finally changed her expression and hurriedly crawled back into the sedan. Poof! Unfortunately, the golden sedan did not resist for long before it was smashed into pieces by the heavenly words. The woman escaped in a panic. She looked at the heavenly book words that filled her eyes, and a look of horror appeared on her face. Trembling with fear, she anxiously shouted, Quickly save me! Like the Martial Way Temple, she took out an ancient sword and stabbed it into the sky. A beam of light fell and swept her away. Before she left, she glanced at the unconscious Yenran and grabbed her as well. However, how could Suyu allow her to take Yenran away? With a fierce grasp of his palm, the flying heavenly words condensed into a sword of words. The sword slashed forward. Without any sword energy, the woman's arm was cut off at the shoulder. The woman screamed in pain and tried to recover her arm. At her level, there was almost no injury that could not be healed. But the strange thing was, there were a few remaining words on her severed arm, like a seal, making it difficult for her shoulder to recover. "Ah, my arm!" the woman screamed as she was completely swept away. Suyu stared in the direction of the light beam. It was this thing again. Where did the Martial Way Temple and the woman come from? What was that force? Having no time to care about her, Suyu immediately checked on Yenran's condition. Fortunately, the space bloodline in her body had not been extracted. Suyu gently touched her brow, waking her up. As soon as she woke up, she subconsciously resisted and used the space domain to escape. "Where are we going?" It was only when Suyu's voice reached her ears that Yenran finally realized where she was going. She immediately stopped and looked at Suyu, crying tears of joy. "I almost thought that I was going to die here." The woman in the palanquin coveted her bloodline. The way they looked at her was like that of a pig or a dog. She had no doubt that once her bloodline was extracted, she would definitely be killed. Yes, they were killed without hesitation. Woo-woo, she could not help but sob in fear. In fact, this was not the first time she had been attacked. Before this, there had been several small attacks, but she had been alerted and escaped. However, the enemies that came this time were too strong, and they directly captured her. When Yenran first obtained the space bloodline, she was extremely excited. But after obtaining it, not only did it not bring her enough benefits, but it also plunged her into deep danger. Suyu had saved her this time, but what about the next time? What about the next time? This mysterious and powerful enemy was simply too much. It was not something that she, a Xian Dao master, could defend against. "Suyu, I don't want the space bloodline anymore, okay?" Yenran made up her mind painfully. Suyu was silent for a long time. "Think carefully. Once you take it away, you will never be able to become the space master again." She was now at the peak of the high-level space domain. If she worked hard for a while, she might be able to reach the Yuan level and become the new space master. "No. I don't want it anymore," Yenran said firmly. If this were to continue, she couldn't guarantee that she would be able to survive. Suyu nodded. "Fine, I will take back the space master's bloodline." With Yenran's cooperation, Suyu covered her head with his palm and began to extract the space master's bloodline. A moment later, there was a string of crystals in his palm. Yenran revealed a relaxed expression. "We are finally free." Next, Suyu brought Yenran back to the ruined area. He returned to the secret room and immediately began to refine the space master's bloodline. With exquisite Xuanji's help, fusing with the bloodline was extremely easy. In a short while, he successfully fused the soul into his body. At this point, Suyu had already mastered 4 Yuan-level domains. They were time, space, soul, and life. If he encountered the Martial Way Temple again, he would not need to use the Great Sickle of 10,000 Tribulations to compete with them. However, Suyu felt that the biggest gain was the Tome of Darkness. He had simply tested the soul-destroying sound just now and was very satisfied with its power. Suyu had never officially cultivated the soul-extinguishing sound before. He had just tried it out. He did not expect its power to be so amazing. The practice was already so terrifying. How powerful would it be if it was completed? Thinking of this, Suyu activated the Yuan level time domain and accelerated time to the extreme. He studied the Tome of Darkness diligently. 2 years passed. The sky above the entire 8-star civilization had been replaced by a dim yellow. The dazzling yellow sunlight kept the 8-star civilization in an oppressive dim yellow for a long time. At the same time, the 8-star civilization's spirit energy, Xian energy, and Taoist energy were all flowing to the outside world at an alarming rate. It was due to the invisible oppression that caused the atmosphere to change automatically. Moreover, the spiritual veins of the mountains and rivers began to dry up. Countless treasures of heaven and earth were declining. Countless creatures were lying listlessly on the ground, as if they had accepted their fate and were waiting for their fate to come. The entire 8-star civilization was shrouded in a desperate and depressing atmosphere. The arrival of the end of the world caused people's hearts to change dramatically. They began to indulge, do whatever they wanted, and enjoy the only time left in their lives. Therefore, public security deteriorated rapidly. Fortunately, Suyu had the foresight to arrange for the Cauldron to take over the remnant domain, which stabilized the order. But even so, the depression of the people could not be relieved. Qin Xian'er sat in the courtyard, practicing the divine fire from the ancient god of Jiu. She looked at the sky from time to time, and her eyebrows were full of worry. I wonder where Kai is. Is it safe there? Can we avoid the destruction of the era? Once the destruction of the era began, it would not only affect the remnants. Everything in the void would not be able to escape. At this moment, in the secret room where Suyu was, an extremely dangerous breath suddenly broke out. Qin Xian'er immediately looked back, but the dangerous breath flashed. What is my husband doing again? Qin Xian'er wondered. She did not know that the secret room where Suyu was at this moment was like a horrible scene from hell. The secret room had turned into a sea of blood. That was one of the forbidden secret techniques of the Tome of Darkness, the boundless sea of blood. Once it was performed, the creatures who fell into it would be melted into a pool of blood. There were no exceptions. Even the master of the heaven law, Suyu, floated above the sea of blood, with a trace of fear on his face. Chapter 2746. And this was only the slightly more profound part of the Tome of Darkness. There were even more forbidden secret techniques in it. Once used, the power would be even more terrifying. He wondered how much Yun Yazi had mastered. Why had he never used it before? When the sinful lady chased after him, it was a desperate situation, but Yun Yazi had never used it. Could it be that he didn't train himself? Suyu thought to himself. While he was thinking, Qin Xian'er knocked on the door. Husband, are you okay? Suyu opened the door and looked at Qin Xian'er, who had a worried look on her face. He smiled and said, I'm fine. After thinking for a while, Suyu said, Close your eyes, and I will give you a gift. A gift? Qin Xian'er's crystal eyes were full of expectation, and she closed her eyes obediently. Suyu lowered his head and kissed her forehead. His lips wriggled gently, and golden words came out one after another. Qin Xian'er opened her eyes in amusement. Is this a gift? It was just a kiss, wasn't it? But she liked it very much. However, Suyu kissed her for a long time before he slowly stopped. Roll up your sleeves and have a look, Suyu said with a faint smile. What for? Qin Xian'er was a little confused. She rolled up her sleeves and was surprised. What is this? On her jade-like snow-white skin, there were strange golden words flashing. Every word seemed to have a spirit of its own as it continuously moved around its body. This is a protection spell. Suyu's fingers gently touched Qin Xian'er's arm. Suddenly, the words of the heavenly book on it burst out with golden light, and Suyu's fingers fiercely bounced off. The stronger the power that attacks you, the stronger the rebound, Suyu said. Suyu said, unless the demon emperor-level existences come in person, it will be difficult for the strong ones below them to hurt you. Qin Xian'er said incredulously, there is such a powerful protection spell? She thought about it and rolled up Suyu's sleeve. There were no similar words on his skin. If it is so powerful, why don't you have it? Qin Xian'er asked suspiciously. Suyu smiled. Because I don't need it. Today, there is nothing in the 8-star civilization that can hurt me. In the past, Qin Xian'er might have foolishly believed this explanation. But now, she shook her head, hugged Suyu's waist, and leaned her head against his chest. Brother Suyu, there's only one protective spell, so you gave it to me, and not to yourself, didn't you? Suyu's smile froze for a moment. He patted her back helplessly and asked softly, Do you know where I am the weakest? Qin Xian'er blushed and said embarrassedly, Are you talking about me? Wasn't she Su Yu's greatest weakness? The Time Master had subdued Su Kai and forced Su Yu to dig out his own heart. Not to mention her? If one day she was coerced or even killed, it was hard to imagine whether Su Yu would go crazy. How could it be you? The most important thing to me is, of course, my heart. Are you stupid? Su Yu poked her forehead. Qin Xian'er's face stiffened, and she looked embarrassed. In the end, it was just her wishful thinking. She angrily loosened her embrace, turned around, and ignored Su Yu. Su Yu was right. The most important thing to her was, of course, his heart. But couldn't he coax her a little? Why did he have to say it so bluntly? Su Yu pulled her into his embrace once again from behind, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a faint smile. But Xian'er is my heart. My most precious heart. Ah? Qin Xian'er understood, and her face flushed. She looked around quickly, and found that the servants in the distance were covering their mouths and laughing, and her face became even redder. She turned around and muttered resentfully, "Why are you so mushy? Aren't you ashamed?" But she was very happy in her heart. It was as if she had eaten honey. Su Yu lifted her snow-white chin and said, "We are an old couple, so what is there to be ashamed of?" Su Yu bent down and carried Qin Xian'er in his arms. "Ah, what are you doing?" Qin Xian'er's heart was thumping. "Of course it's between husband and wife." Su Yu deliberately showed an evil smile, and while she resisted, he carried her into the secret room. After a long time, Qin Xian'er walked out, a little exhausted, and her beautiful eyes were filled with faint resentment. "Really, I am exhausted every time." Su Yu tidied his clothes and smiled without saying anything. The era was about to be destroyed. Everyone was anxious. How could Qin Xian'er be no exception? Everything he said and did was to soothe Qin Xian'er's mood. Of course, it was also to soothe his own mood. What would the scene be like when the era was destroyed? Could the broken Great Formation defend? Would they be reduced to dust in the destruction of the era, or would they continue to live on in the next era? Everything was unknown. Even Su Yu had no confidence at all. After sending Qin Xian'er away, Su Yu went back to rest. Su Yu looked at the sky, and in a flash, he came out of the Great Formation. What he could do now was to rearrange some heavenly book characters outside the Great Formation with the Book of Darkness that he had mastered. But just as he was about to start, suddenly, he felt several auras approaching. His eyes narrowed, and he stared into the distance. Gradually, a cloud was reflected in his eyes. On the cloud, there were several figures that Su Yu had seen before. One of them was the Deputy Court Master of the Heavenly Court, Zhan Fian. "Oh, holy body Su, I haven't seen you in years, it's been a long time." Zhan Fian's white robe fluttered in the wind, looking like an immortal. But Su Yu had long known that they had always coveted Su Yu's divine nine-dragon cauldron. His face was indifferent. "What do you want from me?" Zhan Fian smiled and said, "Holy body Su, 1 year from now will be the day of the destruction of the era. We sincerely invite you to go to the Heavenly Court to discuss the great plan." Discuss the great plan again? Wasn't their plan to trick Su Yu into going to the Heavenly Court and then snatch the divine nine-dragon cauldron? For this, Su Yu had been holding back the holy body. He had always kept it as a trump card, lest they find out. "I'm a little busy now, I'm afraid I have no time to go," Su Yu refused without thinking. The young men behind Zhan Fian were secretly annoyed. "What the hell, we invited him personally, and he's still shy. What a shameless bastard. We shouldn't have come here." Our warm faces were met with cold butts. Little did they know. Their thoughts were all in Su Yu's mind. Zhan Fian was still smiling. He looked at the broken Great Formation, shook his head, and said with a smile, "If Holy Body Su wants to rely on the broken Great Formation of the ancient gods to resist the destruction of the era, then I can only say that Holy Body Su is going to be very disappointed." Su Yu stopped and listened to him quietly. Chapter 2747. Holy Physique Su, there is a very precious video here. Maybe you will be interested. Jean Fien took out a very old and broken piece of jade. There was a video engraved inside. What is this? Su Yu asked. Jean Fien smiled slightly. A video left behind from the destruction of the last era. It was found in the Tao Abyss. It should be the only one of its kind. Su Yu was shocked. Left behind from the destruction of the last era? He took it and probed it with his soul. What he saw was a very blurry image. It was probably because it was too far away and had existed for a long time. During the preservation process, it was inevitable that the image would be damaged. In the blurry image, there was a world of nothingness as dark as ink. Dazzling, shining islands were suspended in the world of nothingness. The shape of one of the islands was exactly the same as a complete 8-star civilization. Su Yu's mind roared. Was the island that Yun Yazi mentioned referring to the 8-star civilization? Were there many islands similar to the 8-star civilization before the destruction of the last era? As far as the eye could see, there were countless islands similar to the 8-star civilization. Among them, the 8-star civilization could only be regarded as a drop in the ocean. All of a sudden, the world suddenly turned yellow. A golden island descended from the sky. On the island there were 10 majestic and solemn stone men. Against the golden light, their shadows were elongated, shrouding all the islands. Then, the golden island suddenly shone with golden light, releasing rays of golden light. The golden light swept in all directions, covering every corner of the nothingness. Under the sweep of the golden light, all the islands were instantly crushed into dust. After a cup of tea, many islands were wiped out. Only a few islands remained. On each island, there was an incomparably majestic figure standing on it. They blocked the destructive golden light. One of them stood on the island where the 8-star civilization was. That indomitable and imposing figure that looked down on the holy mountain. It was no one else. It was the human ancestor. It went without saying who the other 8 were. The 8 divine ancestors. The 9 divine ancestors, led by the human ancestor, were forced into a desperate situation and attacked the holy mountain together. In the great war of destruction, the other 8 islands were all destroyed. Only the 8-star civilization was left alone in the galaxy. The video ended abruptly. However, Su Yu was unable to calm down for a long time. Holy Physique Su, do you still have the confidence to protect this broken island by yourself? Jean Fien asked. The answer, of course, was no. Su Yu's sacred mortal body had yet to reach the upper tier. No matter how strong he was, could he be stronger than the 9 sacred ancestors? However, they, along with the island they were protecting, had been annihilated in the end of the era. If the end of an era really came, no one on the island of an 8-star civilization would be spared. His most beloved Xian him, and the 8-star civilization would all draw a full stop at the end of the era. What about your heavenly court? Do you have the confidence to survive this disaster? Su Yu asked. It was strange. The 8-star civilization had been shattered to this extent, but they did not even see the shadow of the heavenly court. Us. Jean Fien chuckled. This is the reason why I invited Divine Body Su. You will understand everything after you visit the heavenly court. After a pause, Jean Fien continued, if Sacred Physique Su needs it, we will provide the necessary assistance to help everyone overcome the crisis of world destruction. Su Yu was silent. After a long time, he nodded slightly. Okay, I can take a look at the heavenly court, but wait for me. Jean Fien's eyes flashed with a hint of coldness, but she smiled enthusiastically. Of course. Su Yu immediately returned to the remnant domain and sent a message to all the high-level officials, including Qin Xianer. During his absence, he must strengthen the security. Whoosh! Just as he was about to leave, Yu Xiang Wan chased after him. Brother Su, are you going to the heavenly court? Yes. Su Yu looked at him and asked, do you want to go too? Yu Xiang Wan's identity was different from Su Yu and Qin Xianer. He was a descendant of the ancient god Corp's ancestor. In theory, he was a member of the heavenly court. However, for some unknown reason, he was stranded in the outside world. Yes, I want to go and have a look. Yu Xiangwan nodded deeply, with a hint of expectation in his eyes. With Su Yu's help, he had regained the sacred artifact of the ancient god Corp's ancestor. However, he lacked a lot of information about the ancient god Corp's ancestor. This trip to the heavenly court might be able to find a lot of records of the ancient god Corp's ancestor, which would help him obtain the complete inheritance. Su Yu warned, "This trip to the heavenly court will not be peaceful. Are you sure you want to go?" "Go. I also want to do my part for the remnant region. If I can master more powerful strength, I may be able to help when the era is destroyed." Yu Xiangwan said affirmatively. After thinking for a long time, Su Yu nodded. "Be careful." "I understand." Yu Xiangwan nodded heavily. The two immediately set off and went to the outside world. When Zhan Fian saw Su Yu brought a stranger, he couldn't help but be surprised. "This is?" Yu Xiangwan took out the scepter without saying a word. Seeing this object, Zhan Fian was taken aback. The sacred artifact's scepter of the ancient god Corp's ancestor? The young people behind him were also shocked. Who is this guy? Where did he find the sacred artifact of the ancient god Corp's ancestor? Could it be that he stole it like Su Yu? Su Yu frowned slightly. These people of the heavenly court have a strong sense of superiority, don't they? How could they say that others stole it? Yu Xiangwan's eyes turned azure blue, and he said lightly, "Is there anything else you want to ask?" Seeing this pair of eyes, Zhan Fian was completely moved. The descendant of the ancient god Corp's ancestor? Immediately, his face was full of smiles, and he said 3 words in a row, "Good, good, good." In the heavenly court, there is only the descendant of the ancient god Corp's ancestor. If you return, it will definitely cause a stir in the heavenly court. With that, Zhan Fian took the lead and jumped onto the red cloud, and waved. "Come, let me show you the heritage of the heavenly court." Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan jumped on it. Following the red cloud, they went deeper into the outer world. After a long time, this place was already far away from the broken domain. Not far away, they could even see a long crack in the depths of the dark void. Like an abyss, it devoured everything from the great beginning realm. That must be the Tao abyss, right? However, it didn't seem far. In fact, it was incomparably far. Even if Su Yu used all his strength, he didn't know how many years it would take to get there. 1 month later, they had reached the deepest part of the void. This place was almost the edge of the great beginning realm. Suddenly, their eyes lit up. In the depths of the darkness, there was some faint silver light flashing faintly. They fixed their eyes on it. It turned out to be a silver-white, incomparably huge spaceship. The size of the spaceship was not the least bit smaller than the current broken domain. However, the hull was engraved with tens of thousands of heavenly book characters. Chapter 2748. The power was so strong that it could completely resist the destructive golden light. Su Yu was shocked. He was not shocked by the words of the heavenly book. He knew all these words. He was surprised by the unknown liquid. It was similar to the pulse-cleansing divine spring used by the descendants of the masters. The difference was, the liquid energy was extremely domineering. Combined with the words of the heavenly book, it released an extraordinary defensive power. If I can get my hands on that liquid, I can also set up such a great formation, Su Yu thought to himself. The clouds flew and landed on the incomparably huge spaceship. As they approached, Su Yu also found that the spaceship was equipped with tens of thousands of 7-star cannons. Those were 7-star cannons. The sinful lady was a powerful figure, but the Nirvana artifact in her hands was only 8-star. Such an arrangement showed how powerful they were. No matter how many heavenly law masters attacked, they were annihilated. However, Su Yu did not quite understand why the heavenly court had been suppressed by the 8-star civilizations for so long if they had such powerful combat power. With this invincible spaceship, they should have been able to capture all the 8 masters in one fell swoop. There was only one explanation. The spaceship was only recently armed. Some extremely powerful expert equipped them with giant cannons and left behind a huge defense with the words of the heavenly book. Who could that person be? Noticing Su Yu's expression, Zhang Fian's eyes flashed with a touch of smugness. This is the heavenly court. The clouds were about to fall. They could see everything on the spaceship from above. The mountains were continuous and overflowing with spiritual energy. Human cities, demon territories, and all kinds of creatures were here. The most prominent should be the 9 huge mountains that looked like pillars supporting the sky. No matter where they were on the spaceship, they could see them. The vicinity of each mountain was extraordinarily prosperous. Many cities surrounded each mountain like stars surrounding the moon. One could vaguely see the transcendent status of the mountains. What is that? Yuxiang Wan looked at the huge mountain at the end of the line, her eyes filled with a touch of confusion. The underworld scepter in her hand also emitted a faint black light. It was actually responding on its own. Zhang Fian said with a smile, "That is the place where ancient God Corp's ancestor used to train. I will take you there later." His attitude toward Xiang Wan was especially sincere. Oh! Yuxiang Wan's eyes were filled with anticipation. His intuition told him that ancient God Corp's ancestors' mountain contained a legacy that was extremely beneficial to him. Zhang Fian then looked at Su Yu and smiled. "I will bring you to pay a visit to the master of the heavenly court." Su Yu nodded slightly. Under his lead, they descended at the center of the 9 great mountains. That was the most prosperous place in the heavenly court. It even surpassed the 9 great mountains. In the central area, a floating golden island came into view. When Su Yu saw the island, he almost mistook it for the sacred mountain. With his perception, countless lines that were invisible to the naked eye extended out from the sacred mountain and deeply embedded themselves into the spaceship. Through the lines, Golden Mountain controlled the entire spaceship. "That's Mount Buzhou of the heavenly court. It's the core of the heavenly court. The higher-ups of the heavenly court are all there," Zhang Fian said. "Once you're up there, make sure to keep a low profile. Don't make a ruckus, lest you draw the ire of others." Su Yu did not take it seriously. Did he make it sound like he was begging to come here? Wasn't it because of their repeated invitations that he came? They landed on Mount Buzhou. From this, it could be seen that there were 9 huge caves on the mountain. One of the caves in the middle was extraordinarily magnificent, and it was faintly emitting a terrifying and tyrannical power. Zhang Fian lowered her voice and said, "This is the cave of the court master. There are 8 deputy court masters and 1 court master." He was just one of the 8 deputy court masters. His position was not high, but it was not low either. After saying that, Zhang Fian bowed to the cave of the court master and said solemnly, "Court master, I have brought Holy Body Su here." There was silence in the cave of the court master. There was no response. After a long time, Zhang Fian said again, "Court master." "Got it. Ask him to wait for a while." An indifferent voice came from the cave. "Wait?" Su Yu was amused. Did the heavenly court really think that Su Yu came to them on his own initiative? They had come all the way to invite him here. However, when he came, he was turned away at the door and asked him to wait. "No need. Court master, please go about your business." "I will leave first," Su Yu said decisively. Yuxiang Wan reached out to stop him and said in a low voice, "Brother Su, don't be impulsive." Su Yu pointed at his own eyes. "Am I not calm enough?" His purpose of coming here was to see what was so special about the heavenly court. He had seen it just now. He could go back at any time now. As for the higher-ups of the heavenly court, it did not matter whether he saw them or not. Zhang Fian's face changed slightly, and she looked sullen. Holy body Su, what do you mean by this? I invited you here with good intentions, and you are leaving just like that? Su Yu looked at her indifferently and said, I gave you face by coming to the heavenly court to see what you have done. How did you treat me? He shook his head and was too lazy to talk nonsense. He turned and left. Just as he was about to soar into the sky, the space around him tightened, and his body was frozen. Young people nowadays have no patience at all. A hoarse voice came from the cave of the heavenly court. A hunchbacked old man with a walking stick walked out slowly. He had only one eye. It was an eye with 9 colors. He was the master of the heavenly court. Come in. The master of the heavenly court looked at him condescendingly. Su Yu said calmly, How many times do I need to repeat the same words? I am not interested in meeting the people of the heavenly court. Goodbye. He soared into the sky again. The master of the heavenly court raised his old eyebrows slowly and tapped the ground with the tip of his foot. The space around him tightened again. But this time, Su Yu casually used the space domain. No matter how tight the space was, it did not affect him at all. Before leaving, Su Yu looked at Yu Xiangwan and left silently. Yu Xiangwan was different from him. Su Yu was not liked by the heavenly court. But Yu Xiangwan was different. If he stayed, it would only benefit her. How dare you? The master of the heavenly court was displeased. The heavenly court specially invited you because you are the successor of the ancient god Jiulong. Why are you so ungrateful? If Su Yu did not know why they wanted the divine 9-dragon cauldron, he would have let it go. Even if he knew, there was no need to give him face. I am ungrateful, so what? Su Yu said coldly. If they wanted to sit down and talk, Su Yu would still give them a chance. But their attitude towards Su Yu was the same as the female descendant of the ancient god Jiulong, treating him like a servant. The master of the heavenly court stared at Su Yu with his remaining eye. Young man, let me give you a word of advice. The heavenly court is not a place where anyone can behave atrociously. Ha ha! Su Yu sneered coldly. Since he had dared to come, he had expected to face hostility. Why would he be afraid? Is that so? I want to know where the heavenly court gets its sense of superiority. Su Yu said indifferently. The people of the heavenly court probably did not know that Su Yu could still use his sacred mortal body at any time. Chapter 2749. Not only could it be used at any time, but its power would also be stronger than before. The master of the heavenly court tapped the ground with his walking stick. Even his voice became stronger. Then, let me teach you. The two of them were at daggers drawn. A fight was about to break out. One was the master of the heavenly court. The other was the sacred body of the human clan. Once the fight broke out, the surrounding area would be razed to the ground. Zhang Fian hated Su Yu, not the master of the heavenly court. How could he be so unappreciative? How could he confront the master of the heavenly court as soon as he arrived? It was a tense moment. A light chuckle came from the master of the heavenly court's cave. Master, why are you so angry? A man in fluttering white robes walked out of the cave. His appearance was ordinary, but his aura was extraordinary. His eyes were very deep. When he looked at people, he gave people a feeling of spring breeze. But when he looked at his eyes, he gave people a sense of coldness. Hearing that, the master of the heavenly court turned around and apologized. I didn't expect to disturb Gongzi Zhua. Everyone in the world had a name and a surname. This person was respected by the master of the heavenly court, so his status was extraordinary. However, he had no surname. He only used Gongzi instead of his surname, which gave people a sense of mystery. Gongzi Zhua laughed softly, then cupped his fists at Su Yu and apologized. I was the one who pestered the court master, causing her to be unable to see you just now. As a result, she neglected you. If you want to blame someone, blame it on me. This person's words were very pleasing to the ear. But if one thought about it carefully, they would realize that he was helping the master of the heavenly court, blaming Su Yu for being too petty and not being generous enough. It had to be said that this person's art of language was brilliant. Su Yu said calmly, "I think you'd better not interfere in the matter between me and the Heavenly Court." This person was respected by the Master of the Heavenly Court, so he was most likely not from the Heavenly Court. Gongzijue was still smiling, and he said warmly, "Sacred Body Su, can you give me some face and let it go for the time being?" Or was he secretly blaming him? Su Yu would not be allowed to leave even if he wanted to. Who was making things difficult for whom? "Okay, then I will leave now. Can you tell the Master of the Heavenly Court not to stop me?" Su Yu said coldly. As he spoke, he tore open space once more, preparing to leave. Gongzijue sighed helplessly. "Sacred Physique Su, please don't be impatient. The Palace Lord and I were just discussing the Remnant Realms. For the sake of the Remnant Realms, shouldn't you calm down and listen to our discussion?" Remnant Domain? Su Yu's gaze turned slightly. He did not feel that the Heavenly Court had any good intentions. Not long ago, the Heavenly Court's people had barged into the Remnant Realm to capture Yinran. However, there was no harm in listening. "I won't go into the cavern. If you have anything to say, we can talk here," Su Yu said indifferently. Who knew if there were any traps in the cave? The court lord raised his eyebrows. His baleful aura was sinister, but Gongzijue secretly pressed down on him, telling him to calm down. "All right, then we'll do as Sacred Physique Su says," young Master Zhue said. The court lord waved his hand, ordering everyone to leave. Zhang Fian stared at Su Yu coldly. Then, she turned to Yu Xiangwan with a kind smile and said, "Descendant of the ancient God Corp's ancestor, please come with me. I will take you to visit the place where the ancient God Corp's ancestor used to train." Yu Xiangwan looked at Su Yu worriedly. "Brother Su, be careful." The group of people left. Su Yu stood in front of the two of them with his hands clasped behind his back. He said calmly, "If you have anything to say, just say it." Gongzijue smiled and said, "After all, the Remnant Realm is the last resting place for the creatures of the myriad realms. Therefore, I hope that the Remnant Realm can enter the Tao Abyss." Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. The Tao Abyss. It was rumored that it was an extremely dangerous place. Even the ancient god Jilong never returned. The Tao Abyss is one of the few places that can avoid the end of the era, Gongzijue said. "I hope you understand this." Su Yu was deep in thought. "It's not easy to enter the Tao Abyss, is it?" Su Yu asked. If it was easy, why would the people of the Heavenly Court spend so much effort to build a spaceship? Why would they not all enter the Tao Abyss? Gongzijue nodded. Yes, there are many forbidden existences in the Tao Abyss. People from the outside world are not allowed to enter at will. However, if you can get the permission of those forbidden existences, it is not impossible to take refuge in it. Su Yu heard the main point. How can we satisfy those forbidden existences? Su Yu asked. Gongzijue's smile deepened. They are only interested in a few things, such as the divine nine-dragon cauldron in your hands. Sure enough, his ultimate goal was still the divine nine-dragon cauldron. Su Yu did not refuse immediately. In his hands, the divine nine-dragon cauldron was no longer of much use. Because he lacked the real control method of the ancient god Jilong, the power of the divine nine-dragon cauldron was extremely weak. If he could use the divine nine-dragon cauldron to exchange for all the creatures in the remnant regions, for Siener, and for countless old friends to avoid the great calamity of the end of the world, so what if he gave it up? However, the other party was just talking. He could not believe it. Gongzijue took out a token. The words Gongzijue were carved on the back. The word ancestor was carved on the front. I am a descendant of the human ancestor. Can such an identity be trusted? Who? A descendant of the human ancestor? Su Yu's pupils shrank as he stared at Gongzijue. The human ancestor had descendants in the world? Gongzijue casually took back the token and said, although the ancestor perished, he placed all his descendants in the Tao Abyss before he died to avoid the calamity. Now, seeing that the last island in the world is about to fall, I cannot bear to leave the Tao abyss and come to save you. If that was the case, it could be trusted. However, feeling the divine nine-dragon cauldron in his arms, Su Yu was reluctant to part with it. From the very beginning, the divine nine-dragon cauldron had been with him. It was the one that changed the course of his life. Su Yu could not bear to give it away just like that. Holy Body Su, you don't have to answer me now. You can think about it for a while. However, you only have 3 days at most. After 3 days, I will return to the Tao abyss, Gongzijue said. Su Yu nodded. Yes, I need to calm down. This matter really needed to be considered carefully. Seeing him like this, the court master's face relaxed a lot. It would be great if he could take back the divine nine-dragon cauldron peacefully. Someone, send Holy Body Su to rest, he said. Su Yu waved his hand. No need, I will go and see Yu Xiangwan. The court master did not stop him. As long as Su Yu did not leave the heaven court, it did not matter if he wandered around. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Yu left in a flash. The court master's eyes flashed and he lowered his voice. Gongzijue, are you really going to help all the creatures in the remnant regions enter the Tao abyss? It is very difficult. Gongzijue said calmly, it is indeed difficult, but since I said it, I will do it. After all, this person has some connection with my ancestor. The court master sighed with envy. The creatures in the remnant regions are really lucky to be able to hide in the Tao abyss, unlike us, who have to resist. Little did they know. Chapter 2750. Of course it was Su Yu. However, when the soul power dissipated, the court master and Gongzijue looked at each other and smiled as they looked in the direction where the soul power had disappeared. Haha, you are quite cautious, Gongzijue said calmly. The court master laughed hoarsely. Unfortunately, it was all a clever trick. It turned out that the conversation between the two of them was deliberately meant to reassure Su Yu. After confirming that Su Yu's soul power had dissipated, the court master said, Gongzijue, why don't we just take the divine nine-dragon cauldron? He has lost his mortal body and is weak. Why do we need to deceive him? In his opinion, Su Yu did not have the ability to protect the divine nine-dragon cauldron. Gongzijue shook his head calmly. It is better to be safe than sorry. What if he really has some trump cards? So, let's deceive the divine nine-dragon cauldron. As for entering the Tao abyss in the future, I will find another reason, Gongzijue said. He didn't even need to find a reason. As long as he returned to the Tao abyss, what could Su Yu do to him? The court master laughed hoarsely and said disapprovingly, Isn't it just the 10,000 calamities scythe? If I met him alone outside, I might be afraid. But in the heaven court, even 10,000 calamities scythes would be useless. Gongzijue said calmly, If you were so confident, you wouldn't have agreed to my plan just now. Hearing this, the court master smiled awkwardly. Indeed. He was also afraid that Su Yu might have some hidden cards. That was why he didn't dare to attack him directly. Then let's follow Gongzijue's suggestion and give him a few more days to think about it. The court master said calmly, If he is smart enough, then as he wishes. If not, humph, with a sneer, the two of them walked back into the cave. Little did they know where the soul power had just appeared. There was a trace of a soul thread that was so weak that it could not be detected. It was at the level of Yuan. It was extremely secretive. The two of them didn't notice it at all. On a certain hill, Su Yu sat silently in a pavilion with his hands behind his back, looking at the magnificent mountains and rivers of the heaven court. His eyes were filled with a coldness that was as expected. If I were so easily deceived, I wouldn't have lived until now, Su Yu said calmly. He knew that Gongzijue was not a good person. As expected, what made the entire remnant domain hide in the Tao abyss? When Su Yu first heard it, he knew that it was most likely fake. If Gongzijue had the ability to bring the remnant domain into the Tao abyss, why would he let the heavenly court stay outside and take the risk? All right, as you wish, I will stay in the heavenly court to think about it for a few days. Su Yu's lips curled into a cold smile. Since he felt that he was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, then why was he still hesitating? Whoosh, in an instant, Su Yu descended upon the 9th peak. Compared to the other mountains, ancient god corpse ancestors' mountain was extremely desolate. There were very few people stationed there. Many of the spirit herbs had already been dug out by others. In the main hall above, Zhang Fian was enthusiastically introducing to Yu Xiangwan. The hall you're looking at is where ancient god corpse ancestor cultivated in the past. Zhang Fian pointed at the hall. Yu Xiangwan's eyes scanned the crowd quickly. He turned a blind eye to the various luxuries and high-grade restrictions in the hall. Suddenly, his gaze fell on a screen in the courtyard. There were many ancient engravings on the screen, and they were faintly being worn away. What is that? Yu Xiangwan asked. Zhang Fian took a look and said, That is the object that ancient god corpse ancestor used to practice calligraphy. There is nothing special about it. Really? Yu Xiangwan blinked his eyes lightly. He retracted his gaze without batting an eyelid and followed Zhang Fian to tour the ruins of ancient god corpse ancestor. Finally, the tour ended. Zhang Fian patted his shoulder and said, Are you satisfied? Satisfied? Is this place for me to stay? Yu Xiangwan was surprised. Zhang Fian nodded with a smile. What else? You are the only descendant of the corpse clan ancient god in the entire heavenly court. Yu Xiangwan was surprised and said, Thank you, Deputy Court Master. Zhang Fian didn't mind. He pondered for a while and said, Yu Xiangwan, it's like this. Anyone who joins the heavenly court will need to hand over the ancient god artifact in their hands to the heavenly court for safekeeping. Hand over to you? How is that possible? Yu Xiangwan's heart tightened. Seeing that he was nervous, Zhang Fian smiled and said, Don't worry, we are not asking for it. We are just keeping it for the time being. If you need it, you can take it back and use it anytime. This is also to ensure that the ancient god artifact will not be lost or stolen by someone with ulterior motive. Is that so? Yu Xiangwan still found it difficult to hand it over. This is the most important thing of the ancient god corpse ancestor. How can I hand it over so easily? If you are not willing to hand it over, I'm afraid the heavenly court can't take you in. This great hall can't be left for you for the time being. Hearing that, Yu Xiangwan reconsidered. Should I hand it over or not? Right at that moment, a series of footsteps came. It was Su Yu. Brother Yu, did your ancestors warn you not to hand over the saint artifact to others? Su Yu walked over quickly. He glanced at Zhang Fian from the corner of his eyes. He couldn't trust anyone in the heavenly court. When he saw that Zhang Fian was trying to trick Yu Xiangwan into handing over the underworld scepter, he knew something was wrong. Yu Xiangwan was reminded by Su Yu's words. She rolled her eyes and said, Oh, I think they said that I have to hold it for myself and not hand it over to others. The hope in Zhang Fian's eyes vanished instantly. He stared at Su Yu coldly from the corner of his eyes, extremely annoyed. Seeing that Yu Xiangwan was about to waver, Su Yu interrupted. How hateful, he said pleasantly, you have to think about it carefully. If you don't hand it over, the heavenly court won't be able to help you. Yu Xiangwan shook her head firmly. I dare not disobey the orders of my ancestors. Zhang Fian clenched his fist secretly. It's all Su Yu's fault. He suppressed his anger and said, Well, this is a serious matter. How about you think about it for a few more days? All right, let me think about it, Zhang Fian said. Zhang Fian cupped his fist. Then for the next few days you can stroll around the heavenly court. If you need anything, just look for me. He took out a communication jade and handed it to Yu Xiangwan. After receiving it, Zhang Fian left with a smile. But when she passed by Su Yu, she gave him a cold stare. Brother Su, Yu Xiangwan's smile faded immediately and she said solemnly, The people of the heavenly court don't have good intentions towards me. Su Yu said impatiently. You almost gave the underworld scepter to the heavenly court? Yu Xiangwan said sheepishly. That was just a moment of foolishness. Luckily you reminded me. After a pause, he said, What should we do now? Should we run away quickly? Su Yu shook his head and said coldly, You tricked us all the way here. Wouldn't we be at a disadvantage if we just leave like that? Chapter 27:51. Su Yu smiled. You'll find out later. He looked at Yu Xiangwan, then at the screen. I see you're very interested in this screen? Yu Xiangwan nodded and immediately came to the screen. He caressed the words on the screen with his palm. I'm not interested, but there's something in the screen that makes me feel connected by blood. Su Yu pondered and looked around to make sure no one was around. He bombarded the screen with a strength close to that of an underworld master, but the screen did not budge. Yu Xiangwan also exerted all her strength, even using the underworld scepter, in an attempt to break the screen to see if there was anything inside. However, the screen was too hard and they could not break it at all. Step back. Su Yu simply took out the divine nine-dragon cauldron. He placed both palms on it, causing the divine nine-dragon cauldron to spin rapidly. When it was red-hot like red iron, he slapped it away. Rumble, with a crisp sound, a crack finally appeared on the screen. Through the crack, an ancient blood-stained robe could be seen. What is this? Yu Xiangwan was dumbfounded. She really could not understand how such an evil thing could be inside the screen. Su Yu continued to activate the divine nine-dragon cauldron. After a dozen attempts, the screen was finally completely broken. The blood-stained robe inside was finally revealed. It was a kasaya inlaid with an unknown crystal. It was extremely tattered and stained with unknown bloodstains. The robe had been sealed in the screen for an unknown number of years, but there was no sign of decay. Yu Xiangwan reached out and picked it up. She smelled the slightly stinky odor and had a look of disgust. You spent so much time and effort to make this tattered thing for a monk? Su Yu stared at it for a while, thought for a moment, and flicked his finger. The divine nine-dragon cauldron struck it. An ordinary robe should have been smashed into pieces by the impact. However, the kasaya shook gently without any wind, and the divine nine-dragon cauldron was sent flying. Su Yu was shocked. This defense is a bit strong. If you don't want it, give it to me. Before he could finish his sentence, Yu Xiangwan immediately draped it over her body and rolled her eyes at Su Yu. I made it first, and you still want it? Su Yu chuckled. Don't you think it's dirty? Besides, this robe should not be just for defense. He stared at the crystal with a thoughtful look on his face. His soul tried to enter one of the crystals. Immediately, an ice-cold aura entered his mind. An unfamiliar memory immediately appeared in his soul. My descendants, if you obtain the Heaven Shroud robe, please use it to immediately leave the heavenly court. Do not ever return. There was only this brief memory. However, the contents startled Su Yu. Even ancient god Corp's ancestor, who was born here, told his descendants not to come to the heavenly court. What was going on? Could there be something in the heavenly court that even ancient god Corp's ancestor hated or feared? He tried to probe the other crystals, but to no avail. Those crystals required bloodlines to probe. Yu Xiangwan said, Let me take a look. He easily sent his soul into different crystals, but his face was getting uglier and uglier. After a long while, he suddenly raised his head, his expression gloomy. He clenched his fists tightly. Brother Su, we've come to a wolf's den. The heavenly court is not the homeland of the ancient gods like we thought it was. This place is the ancient god graveyard. What? Although Su Yu had expected this, the heavenly court was not the holy land he had imagined. However, he was still shocked by Yu Xiangwan's words. Graveyard of ancient gods? Most of the crystals contained secret inheritances left behind by ancient god Corp's ancestor for his descendant. However, some of them reveal the events that happened during the first era of the heavenly court. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat as he asked, What happened in the heaven court? Yu Xiangwan said solemnly. Ancient god corpse ancestor didn't elaborate, but he said that many ancient gods didn't die at the hands of the Son of Heaven or the ruler, but at the hands of the heavenly court. Su Yu's heart shook fiercely. Speaking of which, the only person who knew that the Son of Heaven and an ancient god worked together to kill him was ancient god Nine Nether. No one knew how the other ancient gods had died. Hearing that they died in the heavenly court was unbelievable. What about ancient god corpse ancestor? Since he left behind a message, it means that he is not dead, right? Su Yu asked. Yu Xiangwan nodded deeply. Yes, ancient god corpse ancestor left the heavenly court and hid in the Tao abyss. He only left behind the ether shroud to give us a chance to escape. Su Yu gazed at the magnificent heavenly court, and a chill ran down his spine. What exactly happened back then? So many ancient gods had fallen here? Why did this place become the place where the ancient gods had fallen? Brother Su, what other plans do you have? Just say it, Yu Xiangwan said. Su Yu said seriously, like I said, I can't come here for nothing. Come with me. He and Yu Xiangwan flew up into the sky and looked down at the entire heavenly court. Moreover, he didn't shy away from displaying the Yuan-level soul realm. Suddenly, a familiar soul fluctuation was reflected in his eyes. The Martial Way Temple? Su Yu's pupils shrank. He should have guessed that the mysterious force behind the Martial Way Temple was the heavenly court. If that was the case, those who were capturing the descendants of the ruler everywhere and extracting the blood of the ruler was not someone else, but the heavenly court? Oh good! It turns out that you have been hiding it from me. Su Yu sneered. He stared at the Martial Way Temple. It was hidden very deep underground, and there was a restriction around it. The heavenly court thought that Su Yu couldn't find it. Little did they know that Su Yu's Yuan-level soul realm was already powerful beyond their imagination. Let's go. Let's find something useful. Su Yu's eyes glanced around. After a while, his eyes twitched slightly and locked on to a palace hidden deep in the southeast. He sensed the auras of many descendants of the ruler. Most of them were the auras of death, fate, reincarnation, and creation. That was the place where they imprisoned the descendants of the ruler. Wait a moment. Yu Xiangwan unfolded the heavenly shroud and enveloped the two of them. Instantly, the auras of the two of them disappeared. Even if it was right in front of them, the heavenly court master wouldn't be able to detect it. After all, this was a treasure left by the corpse ancestor ancient god. With this help, Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan quietly came to the outside of the palace. At this moment, two people walked out from inside. They talked as they walked. Try to speed up the process. We will succeed soon. Unfortunately, we only have the blood of the 4 great domains. We still need the 8 great bloodlines. While opening the door, Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan slipped in calmly. What they saw was hell on earth. Hundreds of descendants of the ruler were chained to the pillars. Their meridians were all pulled out, and the blood of the ruler in their blood was squeezed out. Some of the descendants of the ruler were already dead. The rest were all half dead. The whole palace was filled with the stench of decay and blood. It was nauseating. Occasionally, some of the descendants of the ruler could be heard screaming in fear. Chapter 2752. Yu Xiangwan was disgusted. Maybe I understand why ancient god corpse ancestor left the heaven court. Some of the methods of the heaven court were too sinister. It was not difficult to extract the bloodline of the ruler. There was no need to treat them in such a cruel way. However, the heaven court chose to do so in order to extract a little more of the bloodline of the ruler. From this, one could see how vicious he was. Perhaps ancient god corpse ancestor did not want to be associated with such a person, so he left in anger. Let's save people first, Su Yu said lightly. He stepped forward to save a descendant of the Death Master. It was a petite girl with dark eyes, which was a sign of a pure descendant of the Death Master. She hugged her arms and squatted on the ground, shivering. Her eyes were full of horror. "Don't touch me, don't touch me." He wasn't even very clear anymore, and he kept repeating similar words intermittently. Suyu comforted her softly and turned to save more people. In the end, all the disabled people were gathered together. "If you still trust me, enter this cavern world and I will let you out when it is safe. If not, please leave now." Hearing this, the people who were still conscious nodded. This place was already purgatory on earth. Even if Suyu had evil intentions, how evil could he be? In the end, hundreds of descendants of the ruler were all rescued. Yu Xiangwan said with deep emotion, "Brother Su, you used to think of yourself as a descendant of the ancient gods, but now you are saving the descendants of your mortal enemy. Do you find it ironic?" Suyu was silent. How could it not be ironic? This scene was something he had never imagined. He thought that one day, as a descendant of the ancient gods, he would fight against the descendants of the ruler. But so far, he had only had a fierce battle with Xiaohao. He had no contact with the rest of the people. He even had a period of interaction with the heavenly palace of the time domain. Suyu sighed in his heart and said, "Search the scene. The two people just said that they have created 4 kinds of ruler's bloodline." The two searched the hall for a while. However, they only found fragments of the ruler's bloodline, which was very rare. Something is wrong. Suyu thought and used the Yuan-level soul realm to explore the surroundings. To his surprise, he discovered that there was a secret underground chamber beneath the palace. At this time, Yu Xiangwan also found something. "Look here." Yu Xiangwan stood in front of a stone box protruding from the ground. There were more than a dozen powerful seals on the stone box, each of which was at the level of a heavenly Tao Lord. Yu Xiangwan tried to undo the seal, but with his strength, he could not move the seal at all. Suyu walked over. After studying it for a moment, he said in a serious voice, "This is the seal of the energy source." It was recorded in the Tome of Darkness. The Qi Source seal was a powerful seal that used the words of the heavenly tomes as a carrier. It greatly consumed the soul energy of the person who sealed it. If it wasn't necessary, no one would risk harming themselves to seal others. It could be seen that the person under the seal was definitely not an ordinary person. Who could be sealed inside? Yu Xiangwan was surprised. Suyu placed his palm on the energy source seal and said, "Won't you know once you take a look? The enemy of my enemy is my friend." Since the person inside could be specially sealed by the heavenly court, it could be seen that he was definitely a great enemy of the heavenly court. Crack! Suyu used the words of the heavenly book and deftly unlocked the seal. Just like that, the stone box opened on its own, revealing a revolving spatial entrance. The two of them looked at each other and jumped in. Suddenly, he discovered that he was in a colorful void. 4 corpses floated in the void, spinning in circles. All of them exuded a terrifying aura, especially the power of the domain, which was exceptionally strong. The 4 masters of death, fate, reincarnation, and creation? Suyu was surprised. When Suyu rushed over, the domain of the 4 masters had already been destroyed. He had no idea where their original bodies had gone. Unexpectedly, the corpses were all captured by the heavenly court. "Brother Su, they all died of torture." Yu Xiangwan's eyes were glowing with a faint blue light as she saw the cause of death of the 2 masters. Suyu walked over to examine them and found that there were injuries on their bodies. It seemed that he was still wrong about one thing. The 4 masters did not die at the end of their lives. Instead, they were captured alive by the heavenly court and then killed. "Is the master of the heavenly court so powerful?" Suyu murmured. Killing the masters, Suyu thought that using the sacred mortal body should not be a problem. But to capture them alive, especially 4 of them, was too difficult. "Let's see if their bloodlines are still there." Suyu's gaze swept over them, and he was surprised to find that the bloodline in their bodies was completely intact, and all of it was left in their bodies. That's strange. The heavenly court did not take away the bloodlines? Suyu was extremely surprised. They were all dead, and the bloodlines of the masters remained in their bodies, which would only weaken. Why did the heavenly court not take them back sooner? Brother Su, there are a few more corpses over there. Suddenly, Yu Xiangwan, with her keen sense of smell as a member of the corpse clan, immediately detected something unusual. Su Yu looked up. Wasn't that right? There was a pile of corpses lying in the distance. The two of them walked over to check and found that all of them were from the heavenly court. There were more than 30 of them. All of them had died horribly. It was as if they had been brutally killed by some horrible existence. Creak. A soft sound came from the pile of corpses. Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan were immediately on guard. Who is it? Yu Xiangwan waved the underworld scepter in her hand and separated all the corpses. A young girl hiding in the pile of corpses was revealed. She was about 19 years old and was dressed in bright red. She was holding a flower in her hands and lying on the ground, shivering. There were obvious wounds on her body. On her chest, she was wearing a symbol of the heavenly court. Don't kill me, Death Master, don't kill me. The young girl kept screaming, as if she was extremely terrified. Death Master? Su Yu's pupils shrank. Among the remaining 4 masters, the most mysterious one was the Death Master. He was the only master that Su Yu was not sure he could kill. After all, he was in control of death. It would not be easy to kill him. This made Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan's hair stand on end. They immediately looked back at the body of the Death Master. That body was just a corpse. Su Yu asked, Death Master, have you seen him before? The young girl in red said in panic, He is not dead. He can come back to life at any time. Please take me away, I beg you, take me away quickly. It seemed to be responding to his words. In the enclosed space of nothingness, a gust of cold wind blew. It sent chills down their spines. It was as if there was a cold thing behind their necks, blowing on their neck. But when they looked back, there was no one there. Brother Su, something seems strange. Yu Xiangwan swallowed hard. Chapter 27:53. Swoosh. His soul immediately entered the girl's soul. What he saw was an extremely strange scene. These people were from the Heaven Court, and they were extracting the blood of the 4 masters. But suddenly, the Death Master, who was already dead, suddenly sat up. Then he started a massacre. One of the deputy court masters of the Heaven Court was the first to be swallowed by the Death Master and eaten alive. The rest were hunted down by the Death Master. In the end, the other Vice Hall Master managed to escape by relying on an extremely powerful artifact, and sealed the stone box completely. Those who stayed behind were all killed by the Death Master's corpse. The red-clothed young lady before him had relied on her unique ability to feign death to barely escape this calamity. She had been hiding in the pile of corpses for half a year, until Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan arrived. Seeing this scene, Su Yu felt a chill run down his spine. He finally understood why there was such a powerful seal on the stone box. The person who used the seal was willing to hurt his own soul to seal this place. That was because the Death Master was like a ghost. Unbeknownst to them, they had trespassed into this extremely dangerous area. Let's go quickly, Su Yu said immediately. This place was not suitable for them to stay for long. However, when he turned around, what made his hair stand on end was, the Death Master, who was clearly dead, actually sat up. A pair of tightly shut eyes opened slowly, revealing a pair of inky black eyes. There was a hint of mockery and cruelty in his eyes. Yet another reckless fellow has barged in. The corners of the chief sovereign of Death's lips curled upwards, revealing a cold, evil smile. Yu Xiangwan's heart was thumping wildly. Brother Su, let's go quickly. Swoosh, swoosh. Su Yu did not dare to hesitate at all. He immediately fled toward the entrance. Yu Xiangwan followed closely behind. How would the girl in red dare to stay when she saw the entrance open again? The 3 of them sped toward the entrance. However, just as they reached the entrance, a cold voice rang in the ears of the 3 people at the same time. Since you are here, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Creak, creak. The crisp sound of bones rubbing against each other resounded in the void. Su Yu and the others turned their heads and felt their scalps go numb. The Death Master's body swayed as he stood up. An astonishing death chi rushed out of his body and turned into a pitch-black demonic palm that grabbed at him. In the blink of an eye, Su Yu immediately dashed out. But before he left, he didn't forget about the bodies of the other 3 sovereigns. He teleported through space and snatched the bodies of the 3 sovereigns into his hands. Only then did he leave. Yu Xiangwan followed closely behind, followed by the girl in red. Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan arrived outside the stone box. He was about to leave. Half of the girl's body emerged from the entrance. Just as she was about to struggle free, a pitch-black demonic palm suddenly appeared from the vortex, grabbed the girl's upper body, and dragged her back. "Save me!" The girl let out a heart-wrenching scream and stretched out her hands for help. Su Yu hesitated for a moment before grabbing his hand and using the space domain to shatter the demonic palm. Only then was the young girl finally saved. She was so frightened that her beautiful face turned pale, and she wailed loudly. Yu Xiangwan stared at her. "Brother Su, why did you save her?" "A burden." She was a member of the Heavenly Court, and she had personally witnessed Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan breaking into the secret grounds of the Heavenly Court. Who knew if she would tell on them? Su Yu looked at the girl. "What's your name?" "Hong Yao." "Hong Yao?" Su Yu's brows twitched slightly. Why did this name sound so familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before? He pondered for a moment but couldn't find the source of the name, so he didn't care. "Well, since you are a member of the Heavenly Court and saw what we did, I should have killed you. But I'll give you a chance to live." Su Yu clenched his fist. 4 seals formed by yuan-level domains appeared in his palm. "Swallow it." Hong Yao hesitated. "What is this?" "Something that can destroy you immediately," Su Yu said calmly. Hong Yao wasn't stupid. She immediately understood that this was a seal to control her disobedience. If she had any intentions of betrayal, she could be killed immediately. Hong Yao pursed her red lips and had no choice but to swallow the seal. Seeing this, Su Yu's expression softened. "Follow us from now on. Don't leave our sight without my orders." Okay, Hong Yao said hurriedly. Su Yu nodded. He looked at the empty hall, waved his sleeves, and activated a real thought. Using the yuan-level domain to activate a real thought, its power was unimaginable. All the descendants of the Dominators were transformed. Not only were they realistic, but they could also exist for a long time, even longer than a month. For the people of the Heavenly Court, unless their souls were comparable to the Soul Dominators, no one could see through them. "Let's go to the next place." Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan left the hall. They then appeared at the edge of the battleship to study the special liquid. It was because of this liquid that such a huge defense could be built. If he could get his hands on this liquid, he could also turn the remnant domain into an imperishable domain, which could withstand the destruction of the era. Such behavior naturally attracted the attention of the Heavenly Court. Not long after, Zhang Fian led a group of strong men, rushing over angrily. "Holy Body Su, what are you doing here?" Zhang Fian berated. She disliked Su Yu no matter how she looked at him. Su Yu studied the liquid openly, not taking Zhang Fian seriously at all. He said indifferently, "Why do you care?" Zhang Fian was furious. "Holy Body Su, I advise you not to go too far. This is the Heavenly Court." Su Yu looked at him and said, "And then? What can you do to me?" The court master and Gongzizhuo were waiting for him to give them the divine 9-dragon cauldron. What would Zhang Fian dare to do to Su Yu? If he ran away, it would not be as easy to get the divine 9-dragon cauldron. Zhang Fian squinted his eyes and warned, "Holy Body Su, before I call you a holy body, you'd better restrain yourself. You should know that a fallen phoenix is inferior to a chicken. Don't you know how weak you are now?" After a long period of observation, he was sure that Su Yu had lost the power of the holy body. Naturally, he did not care about him. Su Yu said disapprovingly, I think I'm quite good and I'm quite strong. Do you want to weigh me? Jean Fian snorted angrily. Ridiculous. He could not do anything to Su Yu, so he could only stare at him. All of you, keep an eye on him. If he does anything unusual, inform me immediately, Jean Fian scolded. The strong men who had led them here immediately surrounded Su Yu. They would not let him go even for a moment. Su Yu carefully studied the special liquid, as if there was no one else around. After a long time, he finally had an idea. It should have been brought back from the Tao abyss. It is similar to the pulse-cleansing divine marrow of the heavenly palace. Su Yu's eyes shone. He did not know if there was any extra liquid in the heavenly court. Chapter 2754. If there was, he would try his best to get it and use it in his remnant domain. Brother Su, let's leave this place. Yu Xiangwan looked around at the spies who were watching them with ill intentions. The seal seemed to be very important to them. Su Yu had finished his research, so there was no point in staying. He nodded and said, let's go. However, he kept thinking about the source of the special liquid. When the Heaven Court set up such a huge formation, it was impossible that there was no special liquid left. Moreover, the seal would be damaged sooner or later, so it needed to be repaired. The Heaven Court must have considered this, right? Then, there must be a backup of the special liquid. Hong Yao looked up, hesitated, and lowered her head again. Say what you want to say. I didn't ask you to be a mute. Su Yu's voice came into her ears. Hong Yao said hurriedly, if you want the raw materials for the defensive formation, I might know where to find them. Su Yu looked at Hong Yao in surprise. How did you know? The special liquid was extremely important. How did Hong Yao, an ordinary member of the Heaven Court, know about it? Hong Yao shrank her neck and said, I overheard a dead deputy master talking about it. There was indeed a deputy master who was killed by the death master under the stone box. That was a reasonable reason. Where is it? Su Yu asked. Hong Yao looked at the spies and said in a low voice, Master, follow me. Under her guidance, Su Yu and the others came to a familiar place. It was familiar because Su Yu had found the Martial Path Temple not long ago. It's here. It is said that there is a deputy master guarding this place, Hong Yao said. Deputy master? Su Yu's eyes flashed. Is that deputy master called the Martial Path Temple? Hong Yao was surprised. Master, do you know him? Know him? More than know him. Her eyes were filled with a murderous aura. He had forced Han Xian to die, so he must take revenge? However, he planned to do it when he left the Heaven Court. Once he fell out with the Martial Path Temple, he would become the enemy of the Heaven Court. Now was not the time. There were many things in the Heaven Court that he had never heard of. Okay, let me confirm it again. Su Yu looked away. He couldn't just listen to Hong Yao's words. It would be best to check it out. At this moment, several figures appeared on a mountain not far away from them. Their bodies had faint flickering turtle patterns. Regardless of gender, their skin was extremely rough. A descendant of ancient god Gold Profound? Su Yu recognized it. Your Excellency is Su Xingti, the descendant of the corpse race's ancient god who has just returned, Yu's descendant, right? The leader was a rough and strong man. His voice was like a stone that fiercely smashed into people's hearts. Su Yu looked at him and calmly asked, You are? The burly man laughed heartily. I am Jin Haojin. I would like to invite the two of you who have traveled a long way to visit my ancient god Jin Xian's old haunt. Su Yu's heart moved. Actually, the place he wanted to go the most was the old haunt of ancient god Nine Nether. He wanted to see if he could find a piece of the heavenly shroud left behind by an ancient god like Xiang Wan. But ancient god Gold Profound's old home was also fine. He wielded ancient god Gold Profound's inheritance sacred weapon, the Golden Xuanwu. If the Golden Xuanwu was sentient, it should be able to help Su Yu find something useful. Of course, he was not using it for himself. He was leaving it for the heartless Iron Hunter. The heartless Iron Hunter's life would perish. That was what Lu Zhu had said. Her life would only perish temporarily, and she would be reborn in another way. One day they would meet again. He just didn't know where she was now. What do the two of you think? Jin Haozhen invited. Su Yu revealed a faint smile. Then, I shall accept your invitation. Haha, Su Xing Ti's presence is the honor of the ancient god Gold Profound's old haunt. Please. Under his lead, Su Yu, Xiang Wan, and Hong Yao descended on the mountain. Inside the mountain, there was an enormous stone tortoise statue. The turtle looked exactly like the golden Xuanwu. They sat on the mountain peak near the golden Xuanwu. There was already a table of delicacies prepared. Please, Jin Haozhen said with a smile. The two of you have come from afar. You must be tired from the journey, right? Have a taste of this wine. He took out a bottle of yellowish wine with a half-smile and poured a cup for each of them. Xiang Wan looked over and immediately frowned. The wine contained a trace of the ancient god Gold Profound's power. It was only suitable for the descendants of the ancient god Gold Profound. If other creatures were to drink it by mistake, they might be gradually petrified by the power of the ancient god Gold Profound. This wasn't a toast. It was clearly a malicious challenge. Why, are the two of you complaining that the ancient god Gold Profound's old haunt is not good enough? Jin Haozhen said with a half-smile. Xiang Wan's face darkened. She knew that the so-called invitation was not friendly. It was probably arranged by Zhang Fian. She wanted the descendants of the ancient god Gold Profound to cause trouble for Su Yu and the others, so that they wouldn't have to wander around blindly. He was about to speak, but Su Yu had already drained the wine without any expression. The yellowish wine was poisoned. Immediately, a strong petrifying power appeared and began to corrode Su Yu's body. However, the power spread. It was absorbed by the golden Xuanwu that Su Yu was secretly holding. Su Yu put down the wine cup and said lightly, "It's just so. It doesn't taste good." Jin Haozhen was shocked and looked at Su Yu in disbelief. Nothing happened to him after drinking this wine? How strange. Impressive, impressive. Jin Haozhen applauded. Your courage alone is worthy of the praise of the descendants of the ancient god Gold Profound. In order to express my respect for you, I have specially given you a gift. Jin Haozhen crushed a jade pendant. All of a sudden, the giant Xuanwu began to move. Below the Xuanwu, there were many people bound by chains, struggling to move it. Those people were exuding a strong aura of death. It was the Corpse Clan. Xiang Wan's eyes turned cold. Was this deliberately done for her to see? Rumble. The giant Xuanwu kept turning and finally left. In the place where it had been, there was a lake. In the lake, black shadows could be vaguely seen, scurrying over at an extremely fast speed. The backs of the black shadows were exposed from time to time. Their backs were covered with barbs and looked extremely hideous. It was obvious that they were quite ferocious creatures. At this time, several descendants of the ancient god Gold Profound came to the side of the lake. Each of them was holding a chain in their hands, and on the other end of the chain was a Corpse Clan member. Holy Su, you must have never tasted the Abyss Beast, right? Jin Haozhen smiled mysteriously. Abyss Beast? He really didn't know what the Abyss Beast was. The Abyss Beast is a wild beast that lives in the Tao Abyss. The spiritual meat on its body is an excellent supplement. Eating half a pound of it can increase one's cultivation by a level. Jin Haozhen looked at Su Yu. For a peak Xian path master like you, if you are lucky enough to eat a king-level Abyss Beast, breaking through to the path master level would be a cinch, Jin Haozhen said. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. Chapter 2755. His cultivation had indeed fallen too far behind. Ever since he had woken up, his cultivation had broken through to the peak of Xian Dao Lord, and there had been no further progress. Most importantly, the 8-star civilizations had been destroyed and their resources had been exhausted. It was almost impossible to find any resources that could help them break through to the tunnel master level. So what if there was a chance to break through now? I'll get someone to fish one first and let Sage Su have a taste of it. Under Jean Haojian's order, a descendant of ancient god Gold Profound waved his massive chain and threw the corpse race being on the other end into the pool. All of a sudden, in the water, a black shadow sped over and swallowed the corpse race. The descendant of the ancient god shouted and pulled the chain. The huge fish hook on the corpse's body pierced through the black shadow's lower jaw. Feeling the pain, the shadow immediately fled into the water. Puff, the chains rattled as they were pulled, as if they were going to snap at any moment. Soon, the chain was straightened. He pulled the descendants of the ancient gods on the shore into the water. The ancient god's descendant laughed out loud, and an unparalleled power burst forth from his body. With a forceful tug, the huge black shadow that had sunk into the water was pulled out of the water once more. Then, he used all his strength to pull the black shadow out of the water and threw it towards the peak of the mountain. What great strength! Yu Xiangwan was secretly surprised. This was probably the bloodline power of the descendants of ancient god Gold Profound. Jean Haojian didn't even think about it as he casually grabbed the black shadow and caught it. It was a ferocious fish that was 100 feet long. It struggled with all its might, its mouth full of sharp teeth as it tried to attack Jean Haojian. Jean Haojian chuckled and pressed the fish's neck onto the table. With a smack, the fish was squashed to death. Su Yu squinted his eyes. Such power was probably at the level of a master of the heavenly law. It was extremely terrifying. None of the leaders of the descendants of ancient god Gold Mystic were simple. Haha, holy Su, eat it while it's fresh. Jean Haojian picked up his knife and fork, sliced off the flesh of the abyss beast, and gave it to Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan. Su Yu picked up a piece and tasted it. Compared to its ferocious appearance, the taste of the abyss beast was surprisingly sweet. Moreover, it contained an exceptionally special power. That power felt like the meridian cleansing divine marrow. Once it entered his body, it immediately cleansed his cultivation. Su Yu was still fine, as he had already reached the peak of the Xian Dao Master Realm. With just this little bit of power, he wouldn't be able to achieve a breakthrough. However, after Yu Xiangwan took a bite, she actually showed signs of a breakthrough. When he ate an entire 500 grams, it was really as Jean Haojian said, and he directly broke through a realm. Jean Haojian stared at Su Yu with a smile on his face. Holy Su, do you want to try and fish out the Beast King yourself? Su Yu stared at the black shadows in the pool. Abyss Beast King, Jie couldn't be referring to these, right? These are just ordinary abyss beasts. The Abyss Beast King is hiding at the bottom of the pool. We need the best bait to lure it out, said Jean Haojian. Su Yu had long felt that Jean Haojian would not give him benefits for no reason. Now, the fox's tail should be revealed soon. The Profundity Beast King is only interested in special bloodlines, Jean Haojian said. For example, my ancient god Gold Profound bloodline, or your sovereign bloodline. Su Yu's expression was calm as he asked, So, you intend to make me the bait? Why, holy Su, are you afraid? Jean Haojian tried to provoke him. Su Yu calmly said, Let's just say so. He did not know the abilities of the Beast King, and he was asking him to use his own life as bait? Did he look easy to trick? Jean Haojian's provocation was useless. He stood up and said, Why don't we have a competition? Let's see who can fish out the Beast King. What do you think? Su Yu calmly said, So what if I win? So what if I lose? If you win, I will give you the Beast King. What if I lose? Su Yu's eyes flashed as he asked. If I lose, please let me play with the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. What do you think? He wanted to trade the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron for the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron? Jean Haojian's calculations were quite good. Your offer is too light, Su Yu said. Jean Haojian's gaze deepened as he removed a pendant from his neck. It was a crystal. A scroll was sealed within the crystal. The scroll of ancient god gold profound controlling the holy artifact. What do you think? Jean Hougen asked. Su Yu's eyes flashed. The heartless Iron Caesar had the bloodline and the holy artifact, but he did not have the complete method to control it. He was at a disadvantage. This item was what he needed the most. Sure, Su Yu said. He would not lose anyway. Great. Jean Hougen slapped the table. Let's begin. The two of them flashed to the side of the pool. Jean Hougen bit his finger, causing it to bleed. Streams of ancient god gold profound blood flowed from it. When the blood dripped into the pool, the black shadows immediately gathered, becoming extremely frenzied and ferocious. They were even tearing at each other. At the same time, the entire pool trembled involuntarily. A huge ripple spread out. A dark gaze could be seen from the depths of the pool. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. It should be the Abyss Beast King. Judging from its aura, it was at least at the early stage of the Heavenly Law Master level. I'll make a move first. Jean Hougen jumped into the pool, diving towards the bottom of the pool. Su Yu leaped as well. He did not press down on his finger. He had 4 types of the bloodline of the Master. If he released them, the Beast King would definitely be attracted. That would be too much of a bully and too dangerous. He might as well follow behind Jean Hougen and see what was going on. As soon as he entered the water, Su Yu felt an extremely evil energy staring at him coldly. His soul eyes immediately probed outward. He could clearly see the bottom of the pool, which was invisible to the naked eye. He could clearly see a gigantic beast, which was almost 1/10 the size of the pond, swimming slowly toward Su Yu. As for Jean Hougen, he did not go to hunt the Beast King. Instead, he hid first, secretly waiting for the Beast King and Su Yu to kill each other. Then he would reap the benefit. It's no wonder that you jumped down in such a hurry. It turns out that you were waiting here. Su Yu chuckled in surprise. Feeling the Beast King approaching him, his lips curled into a mocking smile. I'm afraid you won't even have the chance to be the fisherman. He did not retreat. Instead, he advanced, rapidly approaching the Beast King. Sensing Su Yu's approach, the Beast King saw it as a challenge. It let out a deafening roar, causing the water in the pool to tumble violently. All of a sudden, just as the two were about to collide, Su Yu's space domain suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it was in front of Jean Hougen. Jean Hougen, who was hiding in the dark, immediately sensed that something was wrong. He hurriedly came out of his hiding place, but the Beast King had already sensed Jean Hougen's presence and charged over. Su Yu smiled faintly, then used the space domain to leave. This time, the Beast King only noticed Jean Hougen. Coupled with the remnants of the ancient god's blood on his body, it crazily attacked him. Jean Hougen's expression changed slightly, and he immediately dodged. Chapter 2756. At this moment, Jean Hougen looked at Su Yu angrily. As he tried his best to avoid the Abyss Beast King's attacks, he tried to lure the Abyss Beast King back to Su Yu. Unfortunately, because he had cut his finger, there was still a bloodline aura left on his body. Thus, the moment he was discovered by the Abyss Beast King, it pursued him relentlessly. Jean Hougen had no choice but to fight against him. The Abyss Beast King was at the level of a heavenly Tao Lord. Although Jean Hougen was slightly weaker, he had extraordinary strength. When he punched out, he was able to knock the Abyss Beast King off course from afar. However, this only stimulated the Abyss Beast King's ferocious nature. The Abyss Beast King madly attacked Jean Hougen, spitting out sound wave after sound wave attack. The two were locked in a stalemate. No one was weaker than the other. Roar! As the stalemate continued, the Abyss Beast King roared furiously. Hundreds of Abyss Beasts came out from every corner of the pond and surrounded Jean Hougen. No matter how strong Jean Hougen was, 2 fists couldn't fight against 4 hands, and he was immediately forced to retreat. He stared angrily at Su Yu, who was watching from the sidelines, and clenched his teeth. Tortoise, elephant, divine shadow, Bang with him as the center, a dazzling yellowish shadow immediately burst forth. It was in the form of a golden Xuanwu. Jin Haozhen made a hand seal and controlled the giant yellow shadow to pounce forward. The huge Xuanwu figure seemed slow, but it was actually very fast. It immediately killed dozens of abyss beasts. Even the enormous Abyss Beast King was pushed back by the giant shadow. Roar! The Abyss Beast King was extremely fierce. Not only did it not retreat, it became even more ferocious. His ferocious back fiercely slashed across the giant shadow, leaving a deep gash in it. Seizing this opportunity, the rest of the Abyss Beasts attacked the crack, trying to bite the giant shadow to pieces. Jin Haozhen's face darkened as he controlled the giant shadow to kill the Abyss Beasts. 2 hours later, the intense battle finally came to an end. The pool was already blood-red, and the afterimages of the Abyss Beasts could be seen everywhere. Jin Haozhen's giant shadow was bitten into pieces, losing all of its might. The exhausted Abyss Beast King continued to fight Jin Haozhen fiercely. Both of them were like arrows at the end of their flight, and they wouldn't be able to persist for too long. Roar! In the end, the Abyss Beast King was the first to succumb. It gave up on Jin Haozhen and slowly dived into the water. Jin Haozhen's entire body was covered in injuries, and his vitality was greatly damaged because of this. How could he let it go? Evil creature, you want to leave? Jin Haozhen quickly chased after it and was about to kill it. At this moment, Suyu finally made his move. Brother Jin, you must be tired. Why don't you rest for a while? Suyu said as he leaped forward. Jin Haozhen said solemnly, Holy Physique Su, it's enough for you to watch the show. It's very dangerous outside. As he spoke, he threw a punch at Suyu. If even the Abyss Beast King was defeated by a single punch, one could imagine what would happen to Suyu if he was punched. What are you talking about? It's my duty to share Brother Jin's burden. Suyu smiled faintly. Jin Haozhen's origin-grade space domain erupted around him, immediately teleporting him to the Abyss Beast King's back, causing Jin Haozhen's punch to miss. Seeing that Suyu had caught up to the Abyss Beast King before him, Jin Haozhen's expression changed slightly. He split up and chased after Suyu, grabbing the Abyss Beast King's tail with both fists and pulling it fiercely, trying to get rid of Suyu, who was on the Abyss Beast King's back. With a thought, Suyu conjured an evil sword and pierced it into the Abyss Beast King's flesh. With the sword in one hand, no matter how much strength the Abyss Beast King used, Jin Haozhen could not do anything to Suyu. Instead, the Abyss Beast King swung its tail forcefully and sent Jin Haozhen flying. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Suyu clenched his fist and a origin-grade time domain appeared in his palm. Time deprivation. Suyu's palm landed on the Abyss Beast King's head. Its life immediately faded away. The Abyss Beast King wanted to resist, but it had fought with Jin Haozhen for too long and was already at the end of its tether. After struggling for a while, it gradually calmed down and died on the spot. Having successfully killed it, Suyu was about to put away the Abyss Beast King's corpse. Jin Haozhen dashed over fearfully, grabbing the Abyss Beast King's tail and pulling it forcefully. Suyu stepped on the Abyss Beast King's head with the tip of his foot. He fixed it in place with the space domain, preventing Jin Haozhen from moving it no matter how hard he tried. Brother Jin, this is not right of you. Taking advantage of others is not befitting of your status, Suyu said calmly. They had agreed to compete to see who could catch the Abyss Beast King first. In the end, it was Suyu who killed it, but he still had the face to snatch the corpse. It will only end when it leaves the bottom of the water, Jin Haozhen argued. He was in a terrible mood. He had originally planned to trick the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. He had thought that killing the Abyss Beast King would be an easy task, but the reality was a little unexpected. Suyu was much more cunning than he had imagined. However, there was still a chance to turn things around. As long as he snatched the corpse before it left the water, he would not lose. All right. Suyu waved his hand and a pitch-black sickle appeared in his palm. Jin Haozhen was not afraid. The ancient god blood in his body boiled, and a terrifying power erupted from his body. Come. Let's have a showdown. As Jin Haozhen roared, he used his hands to shake the Yuan-level space domain and slowly dragged the Abyss Beast King's corpse over. Su Yu activated the Bloodline of Domination and the Great Scythe of 10,000 Calamities. Last time, Su Yu only had 3 types of Bloodline of Domination. Now he had 4 types. Hence, the Great Scythe of 10,000 Calamities was even larger than before. It was now a full 30 feet tall. Whoosh! Su Yu swung the Great Scythe of 10,000 Calamities. 9 beams of destructive black light shot out, devouring everything in their path. Gurgle. First, the water in the pool was sucked dry as if it had encountered a bottomless pit. Jin Haozhen, who was fighting over the corpse, suddenly sensed the countless beams of black light and was horrified. The Great Scythe of 10,000 Calamities? He immediately dropped the corpse and rushed out of the bottom of the pool without a second thought. The black light brushed past his toes and devoured the entire bottom of the pool. That was not all. The black light did not slow down, sweeping through the mountains. It devoured a layer of ancient god Jin Xian's mountain. The shockwaves also caused serious damage to the cavern in the heavenly court. It was only when the black light collided with the outer defenses that it barely stopped. Jin Haozhen, who was standing high above, gasped, his scalp going numb. Luckily, he had dodged in time, or else. Su Yu smiled calmly and put away the Great Scythe of 10,000 Calamities. He carried the Abyss Beast King's corpse back to the mountain peak and casually threw it on the ground. Brother Yu, do you still want to try it? Su Yu asked. Yu Xiangwan's eyes shone. Of course. That was the corpse of the Abyss Beast King. Su Yu casually cut off 10 pounds and threw it to him. Then he cut off another 10 pounds and threw it to Hong Yao. Finally, he cut off half a pound and ate it himself. He kept the rest. The extra meat could be brought back to the remnant domain and given to the people in the cauldron to increase their strength. Chapter 2757. How could this be? We are relying on the Abyss Beasts to raise our cultivation. He took the Abyss Beast King away and killed all the ordinary Abyss Beasts. What are we going to eat? The crowd was agitated. Jin Haozhen calmed down. His expression was calm. Holy Body Su, I only said I would let you eat the meat of the Abyss Beast King. I never said I would give it to you, right? Ha! Yu Xiangwan laughed and took out a piece of space jade. Do you want me to repeat what you just said? He had said that if Su Yu won, he would give the Abyss Beast King to Su Yu. In the end, Su Yu really won, but he immediately changed his mind. How shameless must he be to do such a ridiculous thing? Jin Haozhen's expression changed again and again. He gritted his teeth. Fine, I'll let you off easy. Yu Xiangwan was unhappy. What do you mean by that? You insisted on inviting Holy Body Su to compete with you. It was you who lost the bet. Why does it sound like you're giving us charity? Jin Haozhen was annoyed. I've already given it to you. Cut the crap. He was no longer smiling and polite. He was in a bad mood. The loss of the Abyss Beast King was a huge loss to the descendants of ancient god Jin Xian. This loss was completely unexpected. Wait, you still have one more bet. Su Yu stared at the pendant on his neck. You're not that forgetful, are you? Jin Haozhen, who was already annoyed, finally lost his patience. He slammed his palm on the stone table and scolded with his eyes wide open. Surnamed Su, don't overdo it. This is the legacy of ancient god Jin Xian. How could it be given to an outsider? You don't need to think to know this. He tore off his disguise and revealed his overbearing and shameless nature. Take the Abyss Beast King and scram. I don't want to see you again. Jin Haozhen slammed all the dishes on the table onto the ground. This was a complete fallout. Jin Haozhen, I advise you to restrain yourself, Su Yu said calmly. Jin Haozhen's eyes were cold. You've already got the Abyss Beast King. What more do you want? Leave immediately. Don't test my patience. He regretted promising Jean Fian to hold Su Yu back. In the end, they lost an Abyss Beast King for nothing. Being challenged is my bottom line. Su Yu waved his palm, and the great sickle of 10,000 tribulations appeared in his palm again. Whoosh, the sharp sickle was pointed at Jean Haojian's forehead. Jean Haojian was furious. Su, don't go too far, this is the heavenly court. Going too far? Su Yu's gaze turned cold. So what if I bully you? He activated his sovereign bloodline and revealed the true appearance of the myriad tribulations' great scythe. A terrifying aura emanated from the great scythe of myriad tribulations. Do you believe that I'll cut you and this mountain apart? Jean Haojian trembled with anger. You! How dare you? Humph! Su Yu waved the great sickle of 10,000 calamity at Jean Haojian. You are seeking death. Seeing that the 9 black lights were about to explode again, Jean Haojian was so scared that his eyelids twitched. Here. I'll give it to you. He tore off the pendant on his chest and threw it away. He no longer dared to be in a stalemate. Su Yu grabbed the pendant in his hand and retrieved the great sickle of 10,000 tribulations in time. That's more like it, Su Yu said coldly. Jean Haojian lowered his head and said, Can you leave now? Su Yu waved his hand and left with Yu Xiangwan and Hong Yao. Not long after they left, Jean Haojian raised his head, his eyes glaring as if he wanted to devour someone. Su, I won't forgive you. Swoosh. He flew away immediately to find the courtyard master and ask him to make a decision. In front of the cavern. Hearing about Jean Haojian's complaint, the courtyard master's face was full of murderous intent. This bastard deserves to die. He had long thought that killing Su Yu would save him a lot of trouble. There was no need to go through so much trouble. Guards, wait. Gongzijue walked out and said calmly, Don't be impatient. The courtyard master was displeased. This human has no respect for the heavenly court. Gongzijue said calmly, As long as I can get the divine 9-dragon cauldron back, I can bear this loss. As for the secret technique of ancient god Jin Xian. He paused, his eyes emitting rays of cold light. If he hands over the divine 9-dragon cauldron obediently, I don't mind letting him have it. If he doesn't, humph, I'll make him spit it out with interest. The courtyard master heaved a sigh. This was definitely not the result he wanted. However, since Gongzijue had said so, he could only agree. Jean Haojian, bear with it for a few days, the courtyard master said. After this, I will definitely seek justice for you. His only eye was glinting with a cold light. Even if Su Yu handed over the divine 9-dragon cauldron, he had no intention of letting Su Yu go. It was Gongzijue who had promised to let Su Yu go, not him. Meanwhile, Yu Xiangwan was beside Su Yu, worried. Brother Su, isn't this too much? If that old thing, the court lord, is disgusted, it might backfire. Su Yu smiled lightly. Don't worry. With Gongzijue, who thinks he has everything under control, he will tell the deputy courtyard master to bear with it. Yu Xiangwan looked behind her. It had been so long, but the courtyard master had not sent anyone over. Brother Su, what are you going to do next? Yu Xiangwan asked. Su Yu's eyes flickered. I'm going to talk to the descendants of the ancient god of Jiyo. Xian had the bloodline of the ancient god of Jiyo, and she also had the ancient god's sacred artifact. If they could find something useful, it would be of great help to Xian. But they didn't invite us, right? Yu Xiangwan hesitated. Su Yu chuckled. What are you talking about? We are all the descendants of the ancient gods. They should be more than happy to visit each other. Yu Xiangwan's mouth twitched slightly. More than happy to visit. What happened on the mountain of the ancient god Jin Xian might have spread throughout the heavenly court. They should be avoiding Su Yu and the others. As expected, when they arrived at the mountain of the descendants of the ancient god of Jiyo, the mountain's defensive formation had been activated in advance. The defense was not weak. Descendants of the ancient god of Jiyo, I am Su Yu, the descendant of the ancient god Jiyo. I am Yu Xiangwan, the descendant of the ancient god corpse ancestor. Please come out and meet us. A cold female voice came from under the defensive formation. Sorry, we are all in isolation and have no time to meet you. Holy Body Su, please come another day. The disgust in the voice was obvious. Yu Xiangwan was speechless. Su Yu had almost destroyed the mountain of the ancient god Jin Xian. It would be strange if the descendants of the ancient god of Jiryo were willing to meet you. Unexpectedly, Su Yu looked surprised. What did you say? I can't hear you. He summoned the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations. After activating it, he swung the scythe down. In an instant, the defense was shattered. The whole mountain was split into two. Several descendants of the ancient god of Jiryo, who were hiding, immediately flew out, their faces full of anger. Holy Body Su! They gritted their teeth, wishing they could rush up and fight Su Yu. Chapter 2758. It was too barbaric. However, Su Yu was holding the great scythe of 10,000 calamity in his hand. Oh, the seal is broken, I can finally hear you speak. Su Yu put down the great scythe of 10,000 calamity and smiled. So, what did you say just now? Several descendants of the ancient gods stared with their eyes wide open. How could a person be so shameless? The descendant of the Jiryo ancient god was a young woman with exquisite features. She did resemble Qin Xiener quite a bit. She stared at Su Yu with her cold and indifferent eyes. Why did you destroy our mountain? Su Yu smiled lightly. I told you, I wanted to hear you speak clearly. You. The delicate woman clenched her fists. Holy Body Su, you will pay for this. Unexpectedly, Su Yu did not have the slightest shame for splitting the mountain. Instead, he walked up to her and held her arm. Speaking of which, my wife is also a descendant of the Jiryo ancient god. Come, let's go down and have a chat. In theory, the descendants of the Jiryo ancient god present were all Su Yu's sisters-in-law. The delicate woman's body trembled, and she bounced away like lightning, embarrassed and annoyed. Holy Body Su! You better show some respect, men and women should not touch each other. Su Yu said helplessly, we are all family, why do we have to be so distant? As he said that, he solemnly introduced to Yu Xiangwan. Brother Yu, let me introduce my wife's sisters, they are all my family. Don't be shy when you are here as guest. Yu Xiangwan mumbled a reply guiltily. When she looked at the descendants of the Jiryo ancient god with murderous eyes, Yu Xiangwan murmured softly, well, we still need to be a little more shameless. I can't wait to bite you to death. What family? Su Yu was completely unaware of their gazes. He descended on the mountain as if he had returned to his own home. Looking at the collapsed ruins destroyed by the great scythe of 10,000 calamity, Su Yu looked sympathetic. Ah, I didn't expect you to have such a miserable life in the heaven court. You should have told us earlier. For the sake of family, I will at least help you a little. As he said that, he released the time and space Yuan realm and launched the reversal of time and space. The entire mountain returned to the state it was in before it was split open. Such a heaven-defying method caused the resentful ancient god descendants of the nine nether ancient god to reveal a hint of fear. He had long heard that Su Yu had already mastered several masters' legacies. Now that he looked at it, it was as he had expected. Coupled with the 10,000 tribulations scythe in his hand, he was simply unstoppable. After restoring the mountain, Su Yu turned around and faced the descendants of the ancient gods. He sighed and said, if you have any difficulties in the future, just tell me directly, understand? Stop tormenting yourself. The descendants of the ancient gods could only stare at him helplessly. The exquisite woman said in a deep voice, Sage Su, what are you trying to do? Su Yu smiled warmly. Of course I'm here to see how my family is doing. He walked around the mountain peak with his hands behind his back. When he passed by a pond, he stopped. A pitch-black flame burned in the pool. It was the divine fire of the 9 serenities. The purity of the divine fire was much stronger than Qin Xian'er's divine fire. Upon seeing this, Su Yu took out a vessel without any hesitation. With a wave of his hand, he collected all the divine flames. The exquisite woman was shocked. She immediately stepped forward and asked, "What are you doing?" "This is the divine fire we use for training." Su Yu said in a concerned tone, "I don't mean to criticize you, but you are a girl, and you live alone on the mountain. What if it burns? I'll help you put away these dangerous things." All of a sudden, Su Yu saw a pitch-black hill not far from him. It was engraved with rare words from the heavenly book. Ordinary people didn't know what it was, but Su Yu recognized it at a glance. It was some kind of spell left by the ancient god of the 9 serenities, which seemed to be related to controlling the sacred artifacts. Noticing Su Yu's eyes, the exquisite woman's face changed dramatically. She immediately came to the front of the hill, blocked Su Yu, and shouted, "This is the relic of the ancient god of the 9 serenities. Don't be presumptuous." The rest of the descendants of the ancient gods rushed over and stopped Su Yu. Su Yu frowned. "What are you all doing? Why are you guarding against thieves? This really hurts me. How could he be treated as a thief when he returned home? Really?" The exquisite woman almost vomited blood. She stared at him and said, "You are not a thief, you are a robber." Su Yu shook his head and was speechless. "Hey, why don't you understand my good intentions? I am doing this for your own good. For example, this pitch-black hill behind you, it is obviously an ominous thing. Staying with you will definitely bring you bad luck." The exquisite woman gritted her teeth and stared at Su Yu. The descendants of the ancient gods behind her were so angry that their chests were heaving. "Can you be more shameless? How dare you say that the relic of the ancient god of the 9 serenities is an ominous thing?" Several descendants of the ancient gods said angrily. Su Yu looked helpless. "You still don't believe me?" He secretly hooked his finger and manipulated the fate realm. Caw caw. At this time, a flock of crows happened to fly past. For some reason, they all had diarrhea. Bird droppings poured down like rain, drenching them all. Within 100 miles, only within a 1-foot radius of where they were had bird droppings. A group of beautiful descendants of the ancient gods, caught off guard, were all drenched in bird droppings and screamed one after another. Looking at their flustered appearance, Su Yu sighed. "Hey, see, I told you to stay away from that stupid stone, and now it's better?" He stepped forward and said, "I'd better get rid of this ominous thing for you. Otherwise, the next thing that falls may be a knife." With a wave of his palm, he was about to put away the black hill. The exquisite woman did not care about the bird droppings on her head, and immediately stopped him. "Stop! Holy Su, don't go too far." Clang! Unexpectedly, as soon as she finished speaking, a black pot flew out of nowhere and hit her head squarely. She reacted quickly and dodged it immediately. Unexpectedly, she stepped on the bird droppings on the ground, slipped and fell into the bird droppings, staining herself. Su Yu looked extremely serious. "This is serious. This stupid stone is too evil. If I don't put it away, I'm afraid someone will die." He hurriedly put the stone into the space ring. When the exquisite woman reacted, it was already too late. You snatched the relic of our ancient god of the 9 serenities?" The exquisite woman was murderous. "Give it back. Forget about the divine fire, this black hill was an extremely important thing." Su Yu turned a deaf ear to her and continued to walk around with his hands behind his back. "You are really a group of family members that I can't rest assured about. Let me see if there are any more dangerous things." "Stop right there." The exquisite woman took out an exquisite little black phoenix. It was somewhat similar to the sacred artifact that Qin Xian'er had mastered, but there were also some differences. Chapter 2759. "What is this?" Su Yu asked. The exquisite woman coldly said, "This is ancient god 9 Nether's second sacred artifact, and it's used in tandem with the first sacred artifact. Once its power is used, I'm not sure if you'll be able to survive. Don't force me to activate it. Return the ancient god's relic immediately. Su Yu's eyes lit up. Ancient God 9 Nether's sacred artifact was truly divided into two parts. Qin Xiener should have only obtained the first sacred artifact. Sister-in-law, since this thing is so dangerous, it's too dangerous for you to hold it in your hands. Su Yu strode over to her. Why don't I take care of it for you? The exquisite woman shouted. Don't come over, I'm going to activate it. I'm really going to activate it. Ah. I'm activating it. Time set. The exquisite woman remained in her holy artifact state and stood motionlessly on the spot. Su Yu walked over and casually took the holy artifact from his hand. Such a dangerous thing, what if it hurts you? Sigh. Su Yu put it away without any hesitation. When time froze and disappeared, the woman squeezed her empty palm and immediately understood. She was furious to the extreme. Su Sage Physique, I'll fight you to the death. Su Yu casually deployed a space primordial realm around him. No matter how it attacked, it was diverted away. It couldn't hurt him at all. Hey, why can't you understand my good intentions? Su Yu wore a disappointed look as he looked around. There are no more good things here. Oh, I mean, there are no more dangerous things here. I will leave now. Don't try to stop me. Hence, he brought Yu Xiangwan and Hong Yao with him and swaggered away. The delicate woman had cultivation, but she didn't dare to use it. He was afraid of angering Su Yu. He could only watch helplessly as Su Yu swaggered off. Holy physique Su, I'm not done with you. The delicate woman and the group of furious women all went to complain to the court master. When the court master heard this, he frowned deeply. Right after Jin Haozhen left, the descendant of the ancient god of the Nine Nether came again. That bastard! The court master was infuriated. However, since he had already decided to use peaceful measures before resorting to force, he could only endure for the time being. Everything would have to wait until he obtained the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. Endure it for now. I will seek justice for you in a few days. The court master consoled. But what he didn't expect was that he couldn't take it anymore. In the next 2 days, one after another, the descendants of the ancient gods came to complain, saying that Su Yu had robbed them by force. Among them, the lighter ones had their ancient god relics snatched away, while the more serious ones even had their mountains moved away. Because of this, he casually injured the descendants of the ancient deities, causing the descendants to complain and gather in front of the court lord, asking for justice. The court master could not bear the disturbance and said, "Fine, follow me." He had reached the end of his patience. The heavenly court had been turned into a mess by Su Yu. Moreover, 2 days had already passed, so it was time for Su Yu to give them an answer as to whether he would hand over the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron to them. The young master stood in the cave and frowned. He sighed and said, "I hope he knows what's good for him." The court master, the 5 deputy court masters, and the descendants of the 7 great ancient gods went to look for Su Yu aggressively. At that time, above the clouds, Su Yu was checking his recent gains. For 2 consecutive days, he had been collecting the ancient god relics and had gained a lot. It's almost time. When I get the special liquid I want, I can leave, Su Yu said with satisfaction. Yu Xiangwan, who was used to Su Yu's shamelessness these days, asked, "What about the descendants of the ancient god Jilong? Why don't you look for them?" To be honest, she felt that Su Yu should look for the descendants of the ancient god Jilong the most. As a descendant of the ancient god, Su Yu would definitely be able to get more useful things from the descendants of the ancient god Jilong. However, among the 8 great ancient gods, he had looked for the descendants of the other ancient gods. The descendants of the ancient god Jilong were the only ones that Su Yu had not looked for. Su Yu paused, smiled, and said, "After all, the ancient god Jilong is my benefactor. How can I look for trouble with his descendants?" Without the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron, Su Yu would not be who he was today. This debt was enough for Su Yu to repay. How could he look for trouble with his descendants? Is that so? Yu Xiangwan did not think much of it. The descendants of the ancient god Zhilong were not necessarily good people. So what if he looked for trouble? Suddenly, Yu Xiangwan seemed to sense something and said, "It seems that we are in trouble." Su Yu knew without looking. A cold light flashed in his eyes. "All right, it's time to say goodbye to them." His eyes turned and fell on the hiding place of the Martial Path Temple. "However, before I leave, allow me to kill someone first." Su Yu stood up slowly, his murderous aura radiating. With a step, he brought them to the sky above the hiding place of the Martial Path Temple, using the space domain. "Wait for me here," Su Yu said indifferently. His body turned into a remnant shadow and disappeared. When he reappeared, he had passed through the surface and reached the underground world. This place was an artificially excavated cave. The walls of the cave were engraved with isolation spells, making it impossible to explore the situation inside the cave. In the depths of the cave there was a pool. It was filled with an extremely viscous liquid. It was the liquid of the defensive spell outside the heavenly court. Su Yu's pupils constricted slightly. However, the amount of liquid was very little and could not meet the needs of the entire remnant domain. Unless they abandoned half of the remnant domain again and moved all the living creatures to the other half. But if they did that, it would be very crowded. It's better than nothing. Su Yu stepped forward and was about to take it out. Suddenly, he stopped. His eyes narrowed slightly, staring at the top of the pool. It seemed calm, but in fact there were faint words of the heavenly book flashing. It was the attack seal of the Book of Darkness. Once someone approached it unknowingly, they would be attacked by the words of the heavenly book. Its power was no weaker than the soul-destroying sound of death used by the Martial Path Temple. Fortunately, this could not stop Su Yu. He spat out many words of the heavenly book and easily unlocked the seal. Then, with a wave of his hand, all the liquid was taken away. "Who is it?" A soft shout came from the secret room behind him. Su Yu did not deliberately hide his voice, so it was normal for someone to hear him. Creak. The sound of the secret room behind him opened came the sound of the door opening. A young man with an indifferent expression, half of his body stained with black light, and his injuries were still there, walked out. He looked at the back of the strange young man standing by the pool in surprise. Looking at the dry pool again, his face changed dramatically, and he asked in a low voice, Who are you?" Su Yu slowly turned around with a cold smile on his lip. "How long has it been since we last met? Don't you recognize me already?" When he saw Su Yu's true face, the Martial Path Temple could not help but be stunned and said in horror, "It's you." He felt like he was dreaming. Su Yu had actually come to the heavenly court. Who let him in? Why did he find this place again? However, there was more fear in his heart. Chapter 2760. "It's fortunate that you still remember me," Su Yu said coldly. He didn't even try to hide the killing intent on his face. He waved his hand and summoned the myriad calamity scythe. Seeing this item, the head of the martial arts temple went numb. He had been injured by this item, and it had left a deep impression on him. "Now I really want to know who else can save you." Su Yu immediately activated his sovereign bloodline. The scythe of thousand tribulations immediately revealed its true form. However, the eyes of the Taotia's head were filled with greed as they stared at the world hungrily. The martial principal temple shouted, "Su Yu, this is the heavenly court. If you attack, the court master will be alerted. With your strength, you are no match for the court master. You'd better think carefully before you act." Su Yu waved the great sickle of 10,000 calamity and said calmly, "I've thought it through. If I don't kill you, I'll never be able to rest in peace." The scene of Han Xuan's death replayed in his mind. In order to prevent him from being humiliated, to prevent him from being controlled by others, he had committed suicide. That was a love that his life could not bear, a righteousness that he could not repay. The martial arts temple had nowhere to retreat, so he took out a black talisman on the spot. The talisman was refined from a special liquid. There were many heavenly book characters floating on it. "I'm warning you, this is the soul-extinguishing sound of death talisman. There is no need to cast any incantation. It can be activated immediately," Martial Path Temple said as he retreated. After the crushing defeat last time, using a special liquid as a carrier, he successfully developed a kind of talisman that could instantly punish people. As long as he infused it with energy, he would be able to activate the soul-extinguishing sound of death. No matter how powerful Suyu was, he should at least be wary, right? Unexpectedly, Suyu did not care at all and calmly said, "It's useless even if you have 100 of them." He swung the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations. 9 beams of destructive black light shot into the sky. Wu Dao Temple's expression changed drastically, and he immediately activated his talisman. A large number of heavenly book characters were released, emitting destructive power. However, before the dark light of annihilation, it was like a wisp of smoke that was swept away. Without thinking, the martial arts temple immediately jumped into a small teleportation formation hidden on the side. With a whoosh, he was teleported away. He barely dodged this dangerous attack. Suyu held the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations in his hand, activated the space domain, and instantly chased after them. He had just arrived in the outside world. What greeted him was tens of thousands of heavenly book characters, trapping him in the middle. The words of the heavenly book released the power of oblivion, causing Suyu's soul to suffer a great impact, making him drowsy. In the distance, Wu Dao Temple crossed his arms and sneered. "You fell for it, didn't you? Do you really think I'm afraid of you?" So, after returning to the heavenly courts, the Martial Dao Temple did not stop. Instead, he worked even harder to study the heavenly book characters that he had mastered while recuperating from his injuries. With the help of the court master and a few deputy court masters, he successfully cultivated several secret techniques related to the heavenly book characters. Oblivion was one of them. As long as the enemy used it, they would be able to trap them within. With the passage of time, his soul would be constantly affected, and in the end, he would fall into eternal slumber. He had tested it on a vice court lord before, and the results were quite good. The vice court master didn't even last 10 breaths before he fainted on the spot. "Is that so?" Suyu's gaze was indifferent. "Isn't this the soul curse technique recorded in the Tome of Darkness? Just by changing his name, he became the Lone Ranger of the Martial Arts Temple? It's nothing." Suyu shook his sleeves, and countless heavenly book characters flew out from them. The two completely different heavenly book characters melted with each other. But it was obvious that the Martial Dao Temple's heavenly book characters melted faster. Almost in the blink of an eye, the heavenly book characters that he was so proud of were all dissipated. You also know how to attack with the heavenly book characters? Impossible, impossible." The smile on the Martial Dao Temple's face immediately froze. "I was born from a stone with heavenly book characters, and I was born to master the heavenly book characters. How can you?" Suyu shook the great scythe of 10,000 calamities in his hand, and did not answer. Instead, he said coldly, "If that's all you have, then it's time to say goodbye." Hearing this, the Martial Dao Temple was shocked. He immediately weaved a seal with his hands. His body quickly divided into hundreds of heavenly book characters, and they merged into the void in all directions. They disappeared without a trace. This was the escape technique that he had developed. It could turn himself into heavenly book characters. It was impossible for the enemy to catch him. In the empty sky, the Martial Dao Temple's cold voice floated, "Suyu, just you wait." Obviously, he had gone to inform the court master and the many deputy court masters. Suyu stretched out his right hand and grasped the air forcefully. Immediately, the whole world seemed to be grasped, and it trembled violently. The hundreds of Heavenly Book characters recondensed in front of Su Yu and pieced together to form the Martial Dao Temple. The Martial Dao Temple was on his way to the court master when he suddenly felt the surrounding scenery change. When he looked again, he found that he was still in the same place. He could not help but gasp. "You, who the hell are you?" His secret technique of Heavenly Book characters was broken again and again. This was absolutely impossible. Martial Dao Temple, you really disappoint me. I put you last to kill. Su Yu's eyes were surging with murderous intent. He had thought that the Martial Dao Temple would be the most difficult to deal with. However, he did not expect that ever since he had mastered the Dark Tome, the Martial Dao Temple's seemingly very powerful tricks had been reduced to nothing. In fact, it was nothing more than that. "Su Yu, wait, we can still talk." The Martial Dao Temple's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that one day, he would not even have the ability to escape from Su Yu. To be exact, this day came too quickly. How long had it been since they last met? Su Yu's strength had increased by leaps and bounds. "If you want to talk, bring Han Xian back to life," Su Yu said, his eyes suddenly fierce. "If you can't, then go down and accompany her." Boom! The great scythe of 10,000 calamity was activated again. 9 world-shaking rays of black light swept through everything. The Martial Dao Temple was horrified and hurriedly called for help. "Court Master, save me!" As he spoke, he also took out several life-saving talismans. Among them, a silver-white life-saving talisman was the most special. The talisman exuded an aura of the same origin as the defensive formation. The destructive black light crushed the other talismans, but was only bounced back by the silver-white talisman. Even so, the powerful force carried by the destructive black light still penetrated the talisman and bombarded the Martial Dao Temple. Creak! His body was immediately torn apart and was about to collapse. "Ah!" The Martial Principal Temple Master screamed as he dragged his bloodied body toward the cave abode where the court lord resided. Swish! However, he did not run for long before the great scythe of 10,000 calamity was pressed against his neck. The Martial Dao Temple stopped in his tracks, his eyes full of fear. "Holy Body Su, please, please spare me. I have eyes but failed to recognize you. I should not have provoked you." To be honest, Su Yu did not feel the slightest pleasure of revenge. There was only deep pain. Han Xian died in the hands of such a person. Chapter 2761. However, he had no fighting spirit at all. Su Yu felt quite calm. "Go down." Su Yu sighed softly. He was going to end his life with the great sickle of 10,000 calamity. Suddenly, several terrifying auras rushed over with an overbearing momentum. It was the court master and 5 deputy court masters. "Stop!" The one-eyed court master's beard and hair stood on end as he burst out with the power of the heavenly law. For a moment, heaven and earth were tumbling, and the stars and clouds were dim. The oppressive aura made the air tremble. The entire heaven court was trembling as if it could not bear the monstrous flames of anger. The court master was really angry. He was extremely angry. This was because Su Yu's actions had far exceeded his expectations. He even dared to kill the Martial Path Temple. Did he even put the heavenly court in his eyes? The answer was no. The Martial Path Temple was overjoyed, but he continued to pretend to be weak and said in a low voice, "Holy Body Su, if you let me go, I can promise you that I will never hurt you. This is a good thing for both of us, isn't it?" Su Yu stopped as if he was weighing his options. Seeing this, the Martial Path Temple Master was slightly excited. He continued, "The court master is a man of his word. I can guarantee this with my life. As long as you let me go, I will definitely protect you from death." The court master and the others rushed over and surrounded Su Yu in a semicircle. Hearing this, the court master leaned on his walking stick and said coldly, "That's right, we can talk about anything. The condition is that you release him first." The court master also valued the martial path temple very much. This person's attainments in the heavenly book were innate, which was extremely rare. No one except the martial path temple could maintain the great defensive formation outside the heaven court. He could not die. Of course, he could not let Suyu go either. No matter what, he had to die today. The martial path temple continued. Did you hear that, holy body Su? The court master has promised you. With his identity and status, he will not do anything that goes back on his word. Suyu thought about it and said lightly, well, I think you are right. The court master will keep his word with his life, right? The martial path temple nodded repeatedly. Yes. His heart was ferocious. If he really let Suyu go, he swore that he would kill Suyu at all costs. No, there was also his wife, who was a descendant of the ancient god, his friends, and the ruined region that he had painstakingly protected. Otherwise, how could he vent the hatred in his heart? At this moment. Fine, then go to hell, Suyu said calmly as he flicked his wrist. The scythe of 10,000 tribulations cut off the head of the martial arts temple. At the same time, the destructive power contained within it also destroyed the soul within the body, leaving not even dregs behind. The head of the martial arts temple still retained the confusion and confusion before death. Why did Suyu suddenly change his mind at the last minute? Suyu crushed his head with his foot, then said calmly, your palace master has zero credibility. Since you want to use your life as a guarantee, I will fulfill your wish. How could Suyu not know what kind of person the court master was? How dare he try to use this to deceive him? The court master, who had forcefully suppressed his anger, finally exploded. His old body trembled as he roared angrily, Suyu! His angry roar shook the heaven court. The court master held his walking stick horizontally in front of his chest and roared resentfully, Suyu, I have treated you with sincerity. How do you repay me? I gave you a chance to go to the Tao Abyss and helped you save the people of the ruined region. Is this how you repay me? What an ungrateful thing. He did not finish his words, because Suyu had casually snapped his fingers. The conversation between the court master and Gongzi Zhua echoed in the air. Gongzi Zhua and the court master discussed how to deceive the divine nine-dragon cauldron. The court master shut his mouth, his old face livid. He was shocked and angry. He was shocked that Suyu had seen through his plan. She was angry because Suyu clearly knew about it, but he still used it to run amok in the heavenly court and deliberately created trouble. He knew very well that he would not dare to do anything to Suyu if he deceived the divine nine-dragon cauldron. After realizing this, the court master trembled with anger. He thought he was playing with Suyu. It was only now that he realized that Suyu had been toying with him all along. Suyu, I knew you were not a good person, the court master said angrily. Now, give me your life. Suyu said calmly, I should be the one saying this. How can a scheming guy who cheats others of their things be considered a good person? Should I call you an old thing? His eyes were filled with thousands of cold lights as he waved the great sickle of 10,000 calamity. 9 beams of destructive black light swept out. The descendants of the ancient gods were shocked and retreated quickly. Only the court master and the 5 deputy court masters looked at him angrily. The court master waved his walking stick, and a special 5-colored light swept out from it, completely blocking the 9 beams of destructive black light. Suyu was slightly surprised. Ever since the destructive black light was used, it had only been blocked by the great defense formation outside the heaven court. It was the first time that a person had blocked it with a magic weapon. As expected of the court master, he had some tricks up his sleeve. Suyu, do you think you can do whatever you want with the great sickle of 10,000 calamity? The court master sneered. You are too naive. There are many secrets in this world that you don't know. His walking stick touched the ground lightly, and the 5-colored power burst out again. I will let you have a taste of my power. The court master was full of killing intent at this moment. His heart was full of regret. If he had known this would happen, he would not have listened to Gongzi Zhuo and killed him directly. Anyway, the possibility of Su Yu retaining the holy body was almost zero. The five-colored energy within the walking stick was like a dark cloud that pressed down from above. Unfortunately, in the eyes of the court master, Su Yu's most powerful weapon was the great sickle of 10,000 calamity. In fact, it was not. Su Yu put away the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations as she stared at him in shock. Then he weaved his hands together. Immediately, unknown words of the heavenly book gathered around him. Those words of the heavenly book showed a particularly mysterious trajectory, constantly wandering around Su Yu. The five-colored power that could block the great sickle of 10,000 calamity was magically decomposed into wisps of five-colored mist when it reached the trajectory. It was not harmed at all. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. The court master was the most shocked. This is the secret technique of the heavenly book? Who taught it to you? Su Yu said calmly, guess. The court master's old face trembled, and he said coldly, I guess go to hell. The surface of his walking stick suddenly cracked, revealing the true appearance of the walking stick. It turned out to be a five-colored sword that looked like metal. It had been disguised as a walking stick.